Hello and welcome to No Restrictions Podcast, the show dedicated to sharing the mental health stories of powerlifting athletes to help you feel less alone in your own struggles. My name is Karen, your host and the owner of No Restrictions Apparel. I'm a sub 63 kilo Canadian powerlifter and mental health advocate. Today's guest is Natasha Ching, an open 84 plus kilo powerlifter, former treasurer and president of Nova Scotia Powerlifting, and national level referee in the Canadian Powerlifting Union. In this episode, Natasha opens up about her experience with being identified as a high anxiety gifted child at 8 years old, her trauma stemming from the passing of two of her mother figures at 9 years old, and her experience of being in an emotionally and financially abusive relationship in her 20s. Then we go into depth about how Natasha rebuilt her sense of self and self-worth through lifting weights after a lifetime of having it depend on either being gifted or being with a toxic partner. We also talk about how she developed and fixed her unhealthy relationship with powerlifting. As a longtime veteran in the sport, Natasha gives advice on how to achieve longevity in powerlifting and how to get started if you're new to it. Now, without further ado, enjoy the episode. Natasha, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here.
It's actually really cool to finally be sitting down and talking to you because most of the times you're either running a powerlifting meet or competing. So this is the first time I'm talking to you for more than 30 seconds.
I know. It feels like it's been it's weird that I've been super present, but also feel like I've been super absent from the Nova Scotia powerlifting community because I haven't competed locally even in the last 3 years. So
you're climbing the ladders. You're getting higher level powerlifter here.
Hey. Doing things, but yeah, no, it's great to make more connections with local lifters again.
For the listeners who aren't very familiar with the NSPL, which again is the Nova Scotia affiliate of the CPU, Natasha was actually the president of the NSPL for 3 years, and before those 3 years was the treasurer for 2 years. Yeah. The not really funny because the pandemic is never really funny. You were president for the 2 years. No, you were president during the pandemic, which is not a very good time to be running a sport association where there's a lot of people.
No, I think the craziest thing was team NSPL arrived back from Nationals 2020. Most of us flew in that Saturday or Sunday, got 1 day of work in, and then Tuesday the world started shutting down, and we were like, what? Because when we flew out to Winnipeg there was 6 cases in all of Canada, and when we flew back there was 160 cases in Canada.
Oh yeah, and we were the cases went up so high.
Yeah, I think one of the craziest things was being at home, and I was planning provincials at that time, and I was provincials isn't till the 15th of June. That's 3 months away. It's fine. I'm not canceling it. We'll keep on, we'll reevaluate later. We're just going into lockdown for 2 weeks. And then and
2 years later.
And 2 weeks turned into forever, and we didn't hold a powerlifting meet again until I think November of that year. And there's some provinces that didn't even get to hold a powerlifting competition until the middle or the end of 2021. Crazy.
So as president, I have some idea of what your responsibilities are because my boyfriend Terry and Mr. Sound Guy is currently the president. But I only know the perspective of I've only seen the roles of a president after the lockdowns. So talk to me about what it was like navigating through the pandemic.
There is who was definitely challenging. I think there's a few components that we had to tackle. One was that I was trying to keep the feeling of the sport alive in the province when most people weren't even able to go to the gym, let alone think about powerlifting, let alone stay connected to the organization. So a lot of attempts of keeping people connected on social media, sharing people, attempting to keep lifting with a sandbag in their basement, or was it Jamie called his Pogie Station or something like that.
I also remember seeing homemade racks with 2x4s.
Oh, yeah.
I forget who. And someone had like a bar. I'm not Mike
Chol had like the homemade
Oh,
rack
yeah.
and the concrete weights. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like I think another guy had like giant truck tires as like plates or something. That was also really
I'm not
cool
surprised.
to see.
I was doing like monthly like COVID update emails to the membership, and I remember signing off one of them. It goes, I know we all want to keep lifting, but no one kill themselves, because like I was seeing like some sketchy stuff going on Instagram, and I was like, nobody die, please. But yeah, there was that. And then there was dealing with Sports Nova Scotia, because like there was, I think I wrote something like 7 or 8 like return to sport plans, when they're like, hey, you're allowed to have like practices up to 15 people. Give us your return to sport plan on how you're going to keep your athletes safe at practices of 15 people. And I was like, what does that mean?
There aren't any practices for powerlifting.
Yeah, and then it was like, hey, you can have competitions with up to 20 people on the competition floor. Like, give us your return to sport plan for that. And I was like, okay, we got 3 referees, 5 spotters and loaders, and 3 people at the head table. I was like, all right, we could have an entire competition with 5 lifters.
Wow.
And I was like, just email back being like, I will not be submitting a return to sport plan until we're allowed 50 athletes. And yeah, I think the worst part about it though is like, I have a great love for like all of the NSPL membership. If I didn't, I wouldn't have stepped up to be president. And like some of those years were like the most rewarding like years of my life in terms of like helping build the sport. And, you know, people were always like really gracious and full of gratitude and stuff. But like I got some shit from people for some of the decisions that I was forced to make as president, where it's like, you know, like I cancel a competition because gyms were shut down 3 weeks out. And it's like, you know, like someone like yelling at me about like, you know, I can't believe you didn't even wait 5 minutes till after the announcement before you like decided to cancel me. What about us that are outside of the HRM? I'm like, you understand that the meet is being held at a gym, right? like we can't host this competition. The competition is illegal. And then the number of people being like, yeah, well, screw the rules, just do it anyway. And I was like, or we could just not lose all of our provincial sport funding and our provincial sport status and have the association fined like $11,000. Like, it was just like, give me some slack. Like the anxiety was like off the freaking charts after like when I had to cancel, I can't remember, it was the Michael LaRoche provincials in 2020 or 2021. People were like after me for it. And it's like, I'm just doing what I have to do.
I kind of like can't understand and sympathize with the people. Well, I don't want to say like I agree with the people who gave you shit, but like you can also like understand their perspective. Some people have maybe like anti-government sentiments, and like, you know, it was like a very political stage of the pandemic that was really weird. Like I kept my feet out of it because I don't want to, you know, get my hands in that kind of stuff. But what was your perspective, or is this too political?
Might be dangerous territory. Like for me, it was just like, I just wanted to, at every stage of what I did during the pandemic, was making sure I was doing everything that was in the best interest of NSPL and its members. And if I had said, screw it, we're gonna host a secret competition somewhere, like that would have gratified 15 or 20 people in one moment. But like, if, you know, worst comes to worst, and it would have got reported and things like that, and, you know, regardless of what my personal perspective on the pandemic is and its protocols, that would have been utterly disastrous for the NSPL. Like the funding that we have that we use to buy new equipment, the sport organization status we have to have access to project funding and all of that, that would have been wiped out in an instant for the gratification of like a half a dozen people that were just mad because they had trained for something that got canceled. And like, I understand, like I trained all of 2021 for a team strongwoman competition. We busted our butts for like 6 months and it kept getting postponed, and eventually it was canceled. And like, was I upset about it? Yes, I was so upset about it. But did I like email the organizer it was completely out of their hands because it was Prince Edward Island that went, nope, you cannot host this anymore? No, I didn't. You know, it wasn't Zane's fault that it got shut down. I'm not going to be like in his face. Like, it's just crazy, you know?
But you also have like the perspective of being the leader of an organization. So you know what it's like having to make these tough decisions. But for the people who don't have that perspective, all they're focused on is their training and peaking. So when the one goal that they've been working towards is taken away, they have a valid reason to get upset.
Yeah.
But they just aren't aware of the behind the scenes that goes on behind running a meet.
Yeah. And that's what I tried, like with my like weekly updates, my sometimes for a while it was weekly, but then like kind of monthly updates during the pandemic, being like, hey, here's an update on the regulations. You know, this is why we can't yet host a powerlifting meet because of these restrictions. And as soon as it's opened up to this amount of people, we can totally, you know, make it happen. I will make it work. I will do whatever I need to do, yell at whoever I need to do. But as soon as it is legal, then we got it. We're on it, you know? But there's only so much, and I'm sure there's quite a few people that either didn't have an active membership or like weren't on those emails or just ignored them.
You mentioned that anxiety was an all-time high, which very valid. Like, you know, it's a pandemic and like competitions are getting shut down. But can you explain a little bit more about the anxiety itself? Like, how did the anxiety like ebb and flow, or was it like a constant, or were there some things that triggered it to heighten it even more?
I think pretty much everybody experienced some level of like anxiety or depression, like during like the course of like, especially lockdowns was really bad for a lot of people. And I found that it was pretty much for me, it was like pretty high, like the entire time that I was running the NSPL during the pandemic. I was pretty much just like riding like high almost constantly. And like by the time I got to the end of my 3-year term, like I was feeling like so stressed and so burnt out that no matter how much I love the members and no matter how much I love the sport, I was like, I can't, like for my own like mental health, I can't re-up for another 3 terms. I love you, Terry. For picking up where I left off. But yeah, no, it was pretty much just like probably the highest my anxiety's been since I was like 30, or before I turned 30. It was just like the whole time.
What parts of running the NSPL are stressful?
I'd say like a lot of the most stressful parts were dealing with Sports Nova Scotia, because you know that if you mishandle any part of like dealing with Sports Nova Scotia, like you're risking, you know, thousands of dollars in funding, which are critical for the NSPL to run. And it's like, okay, you know, like, and they're like meetings and getting like dozens of emails all of the time, like from them, and being like, don't want to miss one that's important, and all of this stuff, and filling out forms and things like that. I actually find running meets to not necessarily be the stressful part. I like running meets like on meet day. There's like there's like some annoying stuff that like leads up where you're like flailing around like a few days like before a meet, being like, temp cards, t-shirts, medals, food, And you're just like all over the place, like a chicken with your freaking head cut off, and like trying to get into spaces early enough to get things set up. And then on meet day, it's just like, what technological disaster will befall me now? And it's like, are the lights gonna break? Probably.
The lights broke last meet.
Yes, they did. Yeah, I was in the side chair. And I was like, white flag. And things like that. But yeah, I think it's mostly you know, because like I had the 1 year running it like before the pandemic hit, and I almost didn't find it stressful at all. I was just like, I love this. I love my job. Members are awesome. We're going to be awesome and do awesome things.
And then pandemic.
And then we did. I mean, like, our members were awesome, and they are awesome and do awesome things. And like, you know, I'll like forever be proud of them. I remember like sitting, I was sitting in the ref chair at the end of the week at Nationals in 2020, and I had a realization that like we only sent a team of like 15 athletes and then a couple of referees that weren't competing. And yet for a 6-day competition, 2 to 3 sessions a day, 2 platforms generally each session, we had a volunteer or a volunteer on the platform or a referee in the chair in every single session for the entire week. And we only had like 17 people up there. Like, that's how like dedicated the NSPL members were to the sport, how like invested in volunteering and giving back to the sport the members were. And I was like sitting there after that, and I was just like, I'm so proud.
like a proud mom.
I was such a proud mom, and I'll like hold that moment like forever, just being like, because one of the things like I want to be is like, you know, I wanted to do was like foster the spirit of like, we're a team, we work together to build this sport, to lift each other up, to, you know, have a real community. The NSPL is be a community, not a series of individual people that lift at different gyms across the province, but a real community. And like when I saw that, I was just like, I'm doing my national referee test, the cake crab, and I'm so proud.
So last episode, I was talking to Jamie McDonald, and he really focused on the community aspect of powerlifting. Yep. And so you did make a difference. One of the favorite things about powerlifting for Jamie was like being able to see everyone he doesn't get to see very often at meets, and just like be like, oh, how's it going? How's your training? And just like catch up. Like when you start powerlifting, you make friends quite easily. Yeah. And powerlifting meets in general, or powerlifting meets are a way to like, they're just like hangouts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially like, you know, you're in the warm-up room and you just like make friends in the warm-up room. And then like afterwards you're like, we're all going out for beers. Like whatever. Or like, I'm going to bed, but tomorrow, you know, like it's fun. Like when we were down in like, I was down in Panama last weekend. It was funny because like there's people on your warm-up rack and stuff that like don't even speak English, but like you still make friends, you know, like and stuff. Like, yeah, no, Team Canada pretty much paired with Team US Virgin Islands, and it was just a hilarious shit show. Like there was like 8 of us on one rack in the warm-up room, and it was just like, well. But no, they were hilarious, and it was awesome. And now it's like, you know, you've made friends with people that you're not going to see even like every couple of meets. It's like, I'll see you when we happen to both be at an international level event at the same time in the future.
What I found really interesting is that like you can make a friend, like a powerlifting friend at like one meet, and then they could be from like an entirely different province or even country, I guess. I wouldn't know. I'm not really a high level lifter. But like when you see them again, it feels like you've been friends for a long time. I find that really weird. Like as someone with social anxiety, like I always think that people like don't like me or something. It's so weird, like having like seeing someone again and they're like, oh, how you've been? I'm like, oh, you remember me.
Yeah. It's so cool. Like I absolutely like adore that about powerlifting. Like I'll see some like lifters from New Brunswick and they're like, it's time for our biannual meetup. Or like for like people I see only at nationals, it's like it's our annual meetup. Like there were some people going into nationals this year that like I knew were going to be in my class and I had interacted with them some on social media, but like we became like the tightest like social media pals without ever having met. And then we met for the first time like day 2 at nationals and it was like hugs. We're gonna, and then Lonnie and then like Brittany Schlater, she's like the 84 plus like national champion and she goes to like worlds and like kicks ass every year, but she's like the most delightful person. They were like, they dragged me to nationals essentially. I was like, I may not even go, I'm gonna hit like 80% and I'm gonna be a train wreck because my knee was like all busted up, and they're like, bitch, you're coming to nationals and we're gonna be on the platform, operation 1 2 3, like it's like one of us would get first, one would get second, and one would get third. And like when I walked off the platform after like my last deadlift and I like looked Brittany in the eyes and I was like, operation 1 2 3 was a success, she just like screamed. And it was like, you guys are just the best. Like powerlifting friends are the best friends.
For you, what does anxiety feel like? Especially when you were dealing with Sports Nova Scotia, like how did it physically feel for you, and what kind of like thoughts went through your head when dealing with that?
I'd say like when my anxiety gets really high, it manifests like more like panic attacks, where it's like you feel like your heart just like racing and you like can't breathe and you have like a really hard time focusing, where you're just like, I can't, like you're like, I would be like sitting at my desk trying to do like my actual job and being like, this is not great, because you can't, like I couldn't like focus like well enough to like do my job, because I was like actively like my head was just like racing with everything that I needed to do, or some like negative interaction that I had with people, or you know, like the social anxiety being like, because I'm not running meets, everyone is gonna hate me, I'm trying to do my best, and I'm just like, you know, but then I'm just like, I'm supposed to be doing math right now. Like, but yeah, no, I'd say it's just like that thing where you get that like knot like right here that makes it like hard to breathe, and it feels like your heart is trying to like punch the knot out of your chest by beating like as fast as it possibly can. And then the like brain fog that comes along with like being like just sub full panic attack. And it was like awesome. I just kind of like lived like that essentially constantly for like 3 or 4 months at one time, and I was like fantastic.
Did it ever peak?
I'd say like that's pretty much what it was like at its peak. Like, and then there was a phase where it had been happening long enough that I just started adapting to that being my reality,
the new normal.
Like, yeah, the reality is like almost everybody that has some kind of mental illness like learns to either like adapt or mask so that it's like, you know, nobody else knows that you know, I have a mental illness, or like, you know, I'm pretending to myself that I don't have a mental illness because I've just like, this is just what it feels like to be me. And it's just like, all right, well, I've learned to function in this state. And I ask myself like so many times where it's just like, did it get better or did I get used to it? Or both?
That's very relatable, actually.
Yeah.
Were you diagnosed with anxiety?
No, I have never. I've had so many very bad experiences with the healthcare system in Nova Scotia that like just for my physical health that I was like, there's no way, like nobody will help me, because like I can't even get like a doctor to take me seriously when I was like, oh yeah, I also had a physical illness during that time of the pandemic and had struggled to get any kind of medical help because of the pandemic. And I was like, this is great. I went from like running a 5K 3 times a week and like training for 2 to 3 hours 3 to 4 times a week to like blacking out at the top of a flight of stairs. And doctors were just like, it's because you're fat. I was like, oh my God. I had like one doctor look at me and go, we're going to test you for diabetes. And I'm like, I hate every one of you. Yeah, man, it was so bad. Like, I got like gaslit by like every single doctor. I was like, here, I have literally food logs and sleep everything. I was like tracking everything, trying to figure out what was triggering it, because like sometimes it was better and sometimes it was worse. And I was like, literally like 3 weeks ago, I could run a 5K. And like now I can't walk to the top of a flight of stairs without like graying out, almost blacking out. And it was just like, no. So when it was like, maybe I should like see somebody for my anxiety, my first thought was not, yeah, let me do that. Because I've had friends that had like anxiety and they're just like, it's just all in your head. I'm like, yeah, that is literally the point.
It is literally the definition of mental illness, because it's a mental illness.
Right? Like, oh my God, no. It was, yeah. So like as an adult, I've just been like, would it have been helpful? Yeah, I'm sure it would have been if I had found like at any of the times in my life where I should have gone to therapy. If I'd gotten it, I'm sure it would have been helpful. But I was either like, did not think that it was accessible to me, or I was too stubborn to access it, or, you know, I just didn't think that anyone would take me seriously enough for me to get any kind of help. I also kind of didn't want to, I wasn't feeling open to taking any kind of medication for it at the time.
Medication for anxiety?
Yeah. Like that if they decided that I should be medicated for it, I wasn't at the time open to that. And like that was hypocritical of me, because like I had like talked to various friends with depression into being like, go see a doctor. And I'm like, do as I say, not as I do.
Did you struggle with anxiety in your earlier years?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. It's just like, I've always had like a generalized anxiety disorder. I just like dealt with it better or worse at different times in my life, where it's like, you know, like the baseline I could deal with, but if things happened, then it would like, obviously like it would get more difficult. But like, I was like a typical high anxiety, like gifted kid, where like my whole like self-worth and everything was like totally wrapped up in my success and in school and the praise I was getting, like the external validation I was constantly getting from people for being like a talented kid or whatever, being like, oh, she's a math genius, oh, and she plays the piano, all of that kind of stuff. Everyone's like, oh my God, you're great. And I'm like, okay, if I just continue to be the absolute best at everything, then everything is going to be okay, right? And then like maybe my anxiety will go away and I'll feel better. The more, you know, the times I would feel better would be like when I would get all of this external validation. But the problem is that leaves you open for, as soon as things don't go, you know, you're no longer the best, or if you have a bad week and, you know, your grades slip or something like that, or you don't do that good on this test or something like that, then all of a sudden, you know, that is like the tipping point for like, oh my God, I'm the worst, you know, like. And that's like a problem that a lot of like kids that are identified as like gifted or needing accelerated learning, like that's like a big problem, like for them to have anxiety in the classroom and out of the classroom.
So you said high anxiety gifted child. Do you have a more formal definition of that? I'm getting the sense that it's like basically like a really smart kid.
Like, yeah, like when I say like high anxiety gifted child, I just mean like when kids when they're younger, like from like my teacher perspective, is like kids when they're younger often identified as a kid that needs to be like accelerated through some part of their schooling, being like most kids are maybe like really good at like good at all subjects, but maybe you're like really good at something. And kids that are really good at something often just get so much pressure put on them to continue to be that really good, you know, if it's parental pressure or school pressure or whatever, that they can develop anxiety around that, where like their only worth is the kind of exceptionalism that they bring forward. So as soon as they don't feel like they're, you know, exceptional anymore, then they feel like their self-worth is suddenly at risk. So there's kids that become gifted that do not have anxiety, but as soon as the system identifies them as like, you know, this kid that's super good at something, and I was like super good at math, and it was like just like that thing where I didn't have to think about math was just the thing that my brain did. It was fine, I got it. Then because like I was identified as being gifted, there was a lot of like pressure on me to continue to be that like super smart kid, that, you know, gifted kid, always being ahead, being natural at it. That like any time where, you know, maybe I hit something in school that I didn't click with me, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh God, no, maybe she's not so smart, you know, maybe she's not worth as much as she thinks she is or whatever. And that that triggered for me like a lot of anxiety. And I've seen it in the classroom with kids, like when I was working as a teacher, that the kids in my class that were doing very well at school had significantly higher levels of anxiety than the kids in my class that were doing okay at school. And it's like, freak.
For you, who put the pressure on you? Where did you feel the pressure coming from?
Kind of from all sides. I mean, there's obviously like some pressure that comes from your parents, you know, and like that wasn't so bad with my dad. My mom put a lot of pressure on me to be like, you know, as much as I could be like the perfect child. And like school teachers, and then like because I did things outside of school that I was always also considered to be very good at, like piano and like other musical things, then like I would get pressure to keep being good at all of the different things that I did, from everyone that was like in a mentor position from me. And it's like good to get encouragement and good to have a bit of pressure, but because I had developed that anxiety with it, it didn't have like a positive impact on me. It kind of had just a negative impact on me, where there's like a point where if you feel like you can't keep up like with the level of expectation, you might just be like, fuck it. Why? You know, like why keep going?
Did you have those moments?
Oh yeah. I kind of like fucked it right through high school. Like, I mean, admittedly, like, you know, like I'm still good at school. So like I just ceased to try because I was like, whatever, like I can't just keep riding with the same level of pressure on me. So I'm going to like make sure that I'm like not at the top. I'm like 10 positions down or something. Like good enough that I'll still get into whatever university I want, but like not good enough that literally anyone is paying attention to me in any way.
How old were you when you were first identified as a gifted child?
Probably grade 3, grade 4. How old are kids in grade 3 and grade 4? Like
Grade
8 or 9?
Like 8.
Yeah, like 8 or 9 probably.
And you lived with that kind of pressure until like the beginning of high school?
I technically still live with that pressure.
Once it starts, it doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away. Like, it doesn't go away. But like specifically the like, you're really good at this thing, you should be really good at this thing, right till the end of high school. Like I tried my best to be like, nobody paid attention to me. But I also technically TA'd my grade 9 math class. So like
while you're still in grade 9.
While I was still in grade 9, like the professor would like the teacher would give me the set of problem, like the work that everyone in the class was going to be working on, which I would then go through the problems while he was teaching everyone else how to do the problems. And then when he was done the teaching part and everyone sat down to work, he would teach half of the class when they had questions, and I would teach the other half of the class when they have questions. Like when I say like pressure, I mean like that was the life I was living as like a 15-year-old kid. Like I was like an unpaid teaching assistant. Good thing I like math.
Very good thing. It's like, it's almost as if like you were treated as an adult.
Yeah. I was like, I was like treated, and like I held the kind of responsibilities and stuff of as an adult from like pretty much like from 10. Like I was treated as an adult, like essentially like as soon as my mom passed, I was like, that was like it. I was like an adult in that moment. Like from there on, like I was just treated like an adult.
How old were you when your mom passed?
10.
How did that affect growing up, especially with all the anxiety, already existing anxiety?
It was awesome. No, I'm not going to say that. No, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Like anytime like you lose a parent, especially as like a kid, it essentially just like throws a wrench in your development that can be like, cannot be unthrown. I guess it's got permanent impacts on you. Like I think like the biggest impact on me was like, because like my mom passed on New Year's Day when I was like the year I turned 10, and then the person I leaned on during that time was my aunt Gayleen, and then she passed on Valentine's Day of that same year. And I was like, every support system that I ever had, like my two moms were just gone, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be a part of this world anymore. And there was kind of like two options that people take kind of when they get in that situation. It's like the route of like depression, or the route that I ended up going, which was a dissociative disorder, which was essentially whenever my brain chose to not be in this reality, it would just be in a different reality. So if I was like, my anxiety's off the charts, I don't want to be Natasha right now, then it would just be like, I would just be somebody else. Not like, it didn't go so far as like dissociative identity disorder, which is that like I had a whole separate personality that would just like take over.
Yeah.
If I was like, I don't want to be here now, and then it was like Carla that came in. No, that was not that was not it. But it was more like any time when you're like in a quiet space where like you're just yourself and you have nothing to distract you from like the negative thoughts or the anxiety or just not wanting to be a part of the world you're currently in. It's just like I would just be someone else somewhere else, just in my head. And like I think a lot of people probably identify with that being some level of that in their world, like because everyone like daydreams, and in a way it's a lot like daydreaming, but like you don't really have any control over it. And it can get really bad if you don't like do things, if you don't identify that it's a thing that is happening to you and try and keep it in control in some way.
In what ways can that go out of control?
Well, if you keep doing it, that's when you get full-blown dissociative identity disorder and you develop like multiple personalities. Because like what I had was basically like stage 1. But like if I wasn't like, hey, I should probably still continue to be Natasha technically at all times when I am like up and about as a person, then it could have gone full stage where the person that I became when I disassociated could be a person that just like took over my body, and I would lose any control over that connection with reality. Like I could choose to be a part of reality if I really wanted to, but if I continued to not choose constantly to be a part of reality, then I could go full blown like dissociative identity disorder.
How were you able to identify that?
I wasn't able to put like a name to it or like really be super aware of it until I was an adult. But like when I was younger, I knew that it wasn't normal. Like I was like, okay, I know that other people don't do this. Like, and like I feel like this is not a good thing. So like one of the like coping mechanisms that I tried to use with that to have some control over it is I like to write. And I started writing like a book about the person I was when I was somebody else. So like I'd be like, okay, well maybe I'm going to write like an adventure novel or something, and she's going to be awesome and, and stuff, like, 'cause I was a kid, right? Like, you know, like I'd be like, I'm going to write a whole 10 pages, you know, of like handwritten or whatever. But it was a way of me saying like, okay, like if I choose to disassociate, it's because I'm going to write another chapter in my book and I need to like figure out what the plot line is. And by attempting to take control of it that way, it became a little bit more like lucid dreaming and a little bit less like full like disassociation. And then like I played a lot of sports, and one thing that I noticed, and one of the reasons I played so many different sports, I made sure I was in a sport every season of the year, is because like when you're playing like a sport, you have to be there in that moment. You can't be in the middle of playing a basketball game and like be someone else somewhere else. And, you know, you can't really do that like when you're in the classroom or when you're like working your job. So I like tried to force myself into more situations where I had to be in reality, or I wanted to be in reality, because like I love playing sports. Like it is like one of my favorite things. I love playing sports. So I was like, I want to be there. I want to like be here in this moment, you know, choosing to do anything that I could that would make myself feel like I had to be in reality and better about being in reality. And whilst I was absolutely tragic at that for the rest of like elementary school, which led to like severe insomnia. Like it was so bad. I slept like maybe like 2 to 3 hours a night for all of grade 5 through grade 9. I slept only about that much. That's how bad the insomnia rocked me with. But then like once I got into like high school, I kind of like figured my shit out a bit better and dealing with it. And like, you know, like back like when I was that age, there's like nobody talked about mental health. Nobody talked about anything. I'm from like literally middle of nowhere in Prince Edward Island. You know, there's a school counselor that would sit down with you and be like, and how are you doing? And you're like, fine. Like, I'm okay. I do not want to talk to you. Like, you know, and you don't know how to talk about it because you don't have the language to talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know it's crazy.
I actually can kind of relate to what you experienced. Not like, you know, the backstory is completely different. But for me, and I'm curious if this applied to you, when I went through my trauma, I also became a bit dissociative, where I would also just kind of be like, just sitting there like zoning out, like pretending that I'm not this person that is sitting in this classroom. But for me, my coping mechanism was school. So I wasn't the gifted child, but I kind of became a gifted child because I worked so hard on my school. That was my escape. In addition to, I also wrote stories. I'm pretending that I was this badass, like, you know, boss bitch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that's a thing where it's like if you know, choose something to like focus and like, I'm gonna use the word fixate, but it's like not necessarily in a bad thing when you're dealing with trauma, to find something that just keeps you grounded in some way. And like, yeah, I mean, like if school was something that wasn't more of like an anxiety trigger for me, like I could see where it would have been like really good to just be like, because you got work, you got homework, you've got all of the hours of the school day to like keep yourself like in that place, you know, in a good place where like I can't think about anything else because I got to think about algebra. You know, can't think of anything else because I have to memorize the countries of the world. I'm so bad at that. Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned that your self-worth was based on being good at school, and that if you performed well and got good grades, you felt that everything was okay.
Yeah. But that was like never actually like the reality, because like me doing good at school didn't necessarily make me a kid that didn't have anxiety. It didn't like, you know, repair the relationships with your family. It didn't fix any of that.
And it didn't fix, or it didn't help when your mother figures passed, because that wasn't something that you could do.
No, being like there was nothing I could be exceptional at that would have
Yeah.
like, you know, cured my mother of cancer. Unless I had like magically, like at the age of like 10, found the cure of cancer, which I was not gifted at medicine. In fact, I absolutely 100% faint at the sight of blood. Fun fact about me, can't be a doctor because, yeah.
The passing of a mother figure, let alone two, at 10 years old, very young, is, you know, naturally would fuck up a child, like,
Yep.
you know, in the head. But because you were also that gifted child whose self-worth was dependent on being good at school, that added anxiety. It's like those two, basically like two major sources of anxiety were like combined and like exponentially increased.
Yeah, they were definitely not like additive. They were like multiplicative, like when they layered on top of each other, because like I don't think that I was like necessarily predisposed to having like dissociative disorder or anything like that, like when I was, you know, younger or anything, but it was just like wham, and it's just like great, I guess this is just the thing to live with. And like I still live with it, like it doesn't, like it's never gone away.
The dissociative part?
No, I just know what it is, and I choose, you know, not to. Like I've gotten to the point where like I can choose, like everyone, especially I've noticed, like, you know, the word being used more since like the pandemic came up, where people be like, yeah, I'm just like disassociating, like scrolling on my phone to try and like, you know, be somewhere else. I'm in social media land and not in reality, just being in social media land, which is like, yes, you are in a way disassociating, but like not the same thing.
Does that ever bother you?
No. I mean, like, I think people need to be aware that when they like drown themselves via social media, that's not necessarily a healthy strategy. And it is a form of like, it's kind of like step one of, you know, I don't want to be in this world. I want to be in a different world. And it could take you a place that you don't necessarily want to go. Cause it's like, you know, like I said, like I've been like relatively mentally healthy for the last, like, I'm going to say like 10 years. I haven't had any, except for like, you know, pandemic, like times, like I've been like super mentally healthy, but like no matter like how happy or like stable or great life is, like I still have a dissociative disorder. Like it doesn't, you know, it doesn't go. And like I catch myself doing it sometimes, because like, especially since I do still write. And my brain sometimes goes, you know, it would be really easy if we just did that thing that you did like when you were a kid. We wrote great stories back then. I'm like, yeah, I was 10. Like, you know, every story a 10-year-old writes is great, you know, but from the perspective of an adult. But yeah, no, like I still do it, especially like when I was really sick and like I was like, I can't exist right now. I just feel super unwell, and I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel of like getting better. Like I noticed that like I really severely dropped back into disassociating then, because it's like, because like here's like an example of like something might happen where like if you're feeling really like really just exhausted, like and you're like feeling really unwell, you might like, and we always search for a meaning. Like everyone wants to feel like there's like some kind of purpose or some kind of meaning behind their suffering. And like people might not be conscious of it, but when there is some kind of reason, then it is easier to stomach. So one thing that happens with dissociative disorder is like I would be existing as a miserable person, and there's no reason for it, and I had no hope in sight because, you know, I was fat and doctors didn't want to help me. And like you could like disassociate in your head, be a person who is also suffering, but their suffering had a purpose. Like there was some reason or like something you grasp on where you're like, I can feel good about the suffering in this context, because like even sometimes like if I'm physically miserable, I can't disassociate and be a person that's not physically, at least somewhat physically miserable. I don't know. It's just like something weird about me. I don't know. Freaking doesn't matter. But like, it's like I don't know. Like that still happens to me like as an adult, where like if I am like super miserable, I could like disassociate to be a person that is either not miserable or a person that's miserable, but for a reason that would make me feel like less stressed about being miserable.
Do you find that like that coping mechanism helps find hope? Like just basically playing pretend?
Yeah, like that's like, it's essentially like what like the early stages, like the lower level stages of it is where it's like, you know, 4 steps up from daydreaming, where it's just like, it's easier when it's hard to be yourself, it's easier to be someone else. When it's hard to be you, it's easier to be someone else. And when you're in your head pretending to be someone else somewhere else, then, you know, in the time when you're doing that, you just don't feel as bad, you know, or you feel better. Or I'm not going to use the word hope, because like at no point do I think that like dissociation is actually going to like help anything in my real life. Like I'm fully aware of that. But yeah, no, it's something that like in the moment or for an hour or whatever, it just doesn't feel as bad.
Yeah. At any point since the passing of your mother's, did you ever feel suicidal?
No, that's like because I said like beginning, like there's two paths I could have taken, which was one was kind of more like depression, suicidal, when my brain went, I don't want to be here anymore. But my brain took the other route, which was, I don't want to be here anymore, so I'm going to choose to be somewhere else. So my brain didn't like mentally, my brain didn't go where we don't want to be here anymore, so we don't want to exist at all. It went, we have the imagination or the inclination or the genetic predisposition to just physically remain here, but mentally be somewhere else. So I don't like at no point in like my mental health journey did I feel like I needed to physically remove myself from the world, only mentally remove myself from the world.
That's actually really interesting to hear, because like I can definitely imagine some paths where a person's I guess starts off on the road that you took of just mentally not being here, but then the situation can get worse, and then it leads to the depression route, and then they choose to take action.
Yeah, like there's a point where like if you were disassociating and it didn't bring any relief anymore. Like if I got to a point where I would dissociate and I'd be like, no, actually I come out of that and I feel worse. Like did I not have any moments of relief, I actually feel worse. Then like I could see like that feeling of like hopelessness. And I think that the disassociations helped me because I got relief when I did it. I didn't get into the phase where I felt as hopeless, because I knew that there's something that I could do that could make me feel better. But if at some point they didn't make me feel better, and I knew that it was just like, it's just downhill from here, then I could totally see where like I could possibly have chosen to go a different route. But luckily for me, in my case, most of the once I got out of PEI, once I graduated high school and got out of PEI and got out of like that, the situation, which was kind of just like living and reliving trauma all the time by being in there. Like as soon as I was just like, I'm gone, moved to Nova Scotia, like it gave me the opportunity to like start over and be in a new situation and try and like adapt without the existing pressures. Because it's like I got to escape all of the pressure, all of the attention, all of the expectations, and be in a place where nobody knew me. No one knew me. No one knew anything about me. Nobody knew what to expect from me. I was just another freshie in, a first year psychology class or whatever at St. Mary's. Like, I could be anonymous. And when I got removed from that situation, it allowed me like the breath, like the air in my chest I needed to like move forward, to be like more healthy, like mentally and even physically, because I just had space to breathe.
Basically recreate yourself.
Yeah. Because like, when you're from like a middle of nowhere small town, everyone already has all of these expectations for you. And they, everyone's always in your business, and they know, being like, oh, who's your father or whatever. Like everyone is just always looking at you. You go into, I remember going back and like for Christmas or whatever, going to the liquor store and just like everybody, like everyone's at the cashier, be like, oh, Natasha, I haven't seen you in a decade. And I'm like, I have no freaking idea who you are. Whatever. I got to just kind of like totally recreate myself. Like nobody knew me as anybody. And that was like such a relief. And I know you were saying before that you had that experience when you got to move out of the city and go to Acadia.
Yeah, like, but for me, like I had created like a story in my head where I guess like the only real influences I had was like TV. So like, those transformation kind of stories. So like I had that playing in my head. And then when I actually went to Acadia and I was like, okay, I'm going to be a new person and my social anxiety is going to disappear. And then so I literally went up to like a bunch of people and was like, hi, I'm Karen. What's your name? Because I didn't know how to socialize. So that's how I like opened up conversations. But then like the old habits come back. And like the same thought patterns are still there. You can't magically change that or like put them in the garbage and that's gone now. It doesn't work like that.
No.
So for you, did your old habits come back while you were in Halifax?
Yeah, like I definitely didn't like escape having like an anxiety disorder by like being in university. Like no one that has ever been through university has ever been like, you know what, that was a really relaxing experience. Like especially doing any like STEM degree, it's just like no, I was just like for like 4 years. Like I think like for me, because I had the dissociation made it very extraordinarily difficult to form connections with people, because it's like, one, like when anybody goes through like that much grief in a row, you're just like, I am going to love or be connected to no one else ever again, because when I get connected to people, they die, and I don't want to experience this kind of grief again. So the only, adaptation you can make is just being like, I'm forming no connections with anybody. And then like add on top of it being like, I don't want to be a part of this world. I'm going to a different world. Well, the people in the different world are not the same as the people in this world. Mm-hmm. So you don't form connections. So like when I went to university, I was like, I'm going to make friends and be social and do the things. And then I was like, I don't know how to do the things.
Yep.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah, that was really rough. Especially like there is relief in being like a nameless person that nobody knows, but then that brings its own realities and its own anxieties where you're like, well, you know, I'm eating alone and walking alone everywhere and stuff, and you're just like, all of a sudden it's just like, holy crap, like I am totally alone. Like you're in a room full of like 400 people in a year one class, but then you're alone at the same time. You don't know anybody. There's nobody to help if you ever get into trouble or anything, and you're just like, oh yeah, you know, like you like the fleeting thing about like sometimes university friends is like you'll, you know, make friends in year one and then everybody goes away and you come back for year two and then it's just like most of them are not there anymore and you're just like, oh great, I'm gonna do this all over again.
Yeah, university is pretty weird.
It's pretty crazy. But like when I tried to be like, all of like my mental health stuff made me go to St. Mary's specifically to do psychology. And then I did 2 years of doing like a science degree in psychology at St. Mary's. And then I was like, this is not what I want to do. This is not like what I want to be. Like I wasn't feeling challenged even in the slightest. It was just so easy. And I was like, okay, and then when I was in my second year, like when you do a science degree at St. Mary's, you have to take calculus. It's mandatory for a science degree, Calc 1, and then you could either take Calc 2 or stats. So I took Calc 1 and Calc 2 in second year because I was like, fun. It's math. Math is fun. But most people are like probably just like getting tremors thinking about university calculus. I tutor a lot of people through like university calculus and they're mostly just, yeah. But it made me remember like how much happiness it could bring me if I wasn't doing it under pressure. Like when suddenly it was like, because I mean often like things that you're gifted at, like things that you like I loved math, still love math, it's great, it's wonderful,
It's your job,
it's my job now. Yeah, literally my job now. But yeah, it was like, oh, like I can like accept back in that part of myself but like not do it under pressure. So then I just was like, went straight from a psychology degree and switched right over to a math degree. And I'm sure like someone in the office at St. Mary's just got whiplash from my major switch. Can you submit like the form to like change your majors? Just being like,
because usually like it would be like the other way.
What? Like, okay. But like the math department at St. Mary's was like amazing for like every part of me and every part of my mental health because it was small. Like by the time I got to third year, there was like maybe 10 of us that made it to third year math. It's a very hard program.
How many were at the beginning?
Well, see, the thing is like year 1 and year 2 math classes at St. Mary's are shared with engineers sometimes and astrophysics and physicists. So it's hard, but I know like a bunch of people like dropped off when they hit the wall of when you go like year 1, year 2 is like practical mathematics. And then once you get into year 3 is where you get like really abstract. And a lot of people could not make that like transition where it's going from like, yeah, you know, differential equations or like derivatives, like all that kind of stuff. You're like, it has a thing in the real world.
Yeah.
You know, like it has applications and, you know, you can do your application problems and see that it is a thing that impacts the real world. But then when you get to like higher levels, it gets to be like much more theoretical and you're just like, I won't lie, it's totally rough. And I'm like, I totally understand the people that did not make it. But because it was such a small group, like I got to know like everybody in the program and all of my professors, like every single professor knew me by name and like I did research apprenticeships with them and all of this kind of stuff. And like that was just being like they knew how to encourage what I was good at, encourage like my gift without making me feel like I like it was like without bringing the pressure down on me, you know, like I only I only felt the pressure one time, which is when I told my thesis supervisor that I was going to go into education because I wanted to teach. And the literal dean of science at St. Mary's called me and was like, please do your master's. And they're like, they just wanted me to go. I was like, you could not pay me to do my master's. And they went, but what if we did? And I was like, no, thank you. No, thank you. Yeah, that was really funny. But in retrospect, it was funny. I was shitting my pants in the, time it was happening or whatever. But yeah, it was like everything I needed to like find a community of like-minded, awkward people. Because I mean, like, there is very few people that are like, I'm super good at mathematics and also an absolute extrovert. Like, it's just like, yeah, I know.
So it helped you basically relearn how to
have friends, talk to people, like go to social gatherings and be personable with people. Like a lot of the like personality like traits of the kind of like extrovert side of me that people see at like powerlifting meets and stuff, like I learned how to do that in that like 2 or 3 years, like 2-3 years that I was in that program. Because before that I was just like like, no, I'm just not a human.
Since meeting the group of people in your math classes, did your mental health continue to improve?
For quite a while, like I made a lot of new friends and I got a really good group of people that I felt like kind of loved me and supported me unconditionally, which was like a new experience for me to feel what felt like unconditional love and support from people. And but like when you don't let people in and you decide that you're like, no, it's okay to let people in, sometimes you let in people that you shouldn't. And one of those people was like one of my first like actual relationship, because I imagine like if you're like a high anxiety dissociative person, you don't have a lot of like really great relationships in your early life with men folk, or I didn't have any relations with women folk either, but like I just kind of decided that this person was a person that I was going to let like closer into my circle. And it ended up being like, looking back on it, it was toxic almost from the very beginning, but it wasn't until like probably like 3 years in that I realized like how toxic it was. And because I didn't because I'd never gone to therapy for my self-worth problems or anything like that like I let myself fall into that trap of having my self-worth be determined by someone that wasn't myself again. And like, I put that on his plate and he did not treat that gift as he should have. And it ended up being like massively like toxic.
In what
situation.
ways was it toxic?
There was kind of two forms of ways, like two like forms of kind of abuse is a hard word to say, but two forms of abuse. One of them was kind of like emotional abuse, which is just like gaslighting, making you feel like you're worthless or a piece of shit, like that they're the only person that would appreciate you, and even they don't appreciate you, you're just lucky that they tolerate you, like that kind of like, just like feeling like you have so little value. And the other way is what I call financial abuse, which is essentially when it got to its worst, I was being used so badly. Like I was paying like all of the bills, taking care of everything and shouldering all of the financial stress of being like essentially broke. Because like when you're a university student, like you can barely pay your own bills, let alone someone else's bills. So I was like doing an education degree, which is extremely demanding, whilst essentially working a full-time minimum wage job just to like not get evicted. We had like $5 to $10 like grocery budgets for a week for like 2 people. Yeah, there's like a lot of things. Like all people that follow me on Instagram just like love the like Natasha's making her own bagels this week or whatever. Like, but like the kind of somewhat sad background to that is like a lot of those skills I learned because I had no budget whatsoever for food. So it was like everything that I could make myself, I would make myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't buy a loaf of bread at the store. I made bread because I couldn't afford to buy a loaf of bread at the store, you know? And that was all because like I was shouldering every single like financial responsibility for the 2 of us, and he like refused to work and like didn't contribute in any way, and like kind of partially ruined my credit and like all kinds of stuff. And like that was like in like both of those things were ways of like entrapment, because like I no longer had any financial cushion to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's one of the reasons why I felt like, because like a year into living in the valley, I was like, this is like, I had my first moment of this is bad, like I need to get out. But then I couldn't. Like I was like, I don't have anything, I can't afford to live by myself right now. Like if it's just like, oh my god, like I can't, like it was just this panic where like he'd basically stripped away any financial cushion or any financial stability I had, and I could no longer easily get out. And plus you're on a lease, those year-long leases, like I don't feel like they should exist. Like from the perspective of someone that has experienced abuse, a year-long lease is like entrapment. Like you're just like,
it's like a jail sentence.
It's like a jail sentence. You're just like waiting for the year to be up so that you can get out.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the emotional stuff where you're just like, you know, I need to keep trying to make it work, and maybe I'll make him, you know, I'll get him to change or whatever, because you feel so worthless. You feel like this is your last chance, because if, you know, he breaks up with you, then you'll never find anybody, because you're just this like, you know, fat shitty person that no one would ever love, which is like absolute rock bottom. But you know, I did get out at the end of the year-long lease when we moved from Acadia back up to the city to work. That was just like it was just like, we're moving to separate places, we're done. Mm-hmm. And I wish that I'd made that change earlier, but like I can only look back on myself and forgive myself for not leaving earlier, because like I understand why like past me made the decisions that she did, even if I wish that she made different ones.
What decisions were they?
Like just like not leaving. Like there's times when I look back and I was like, where we were at when we even left the city and like moved, because like we were together for like 3 years in Halifax when we were both at St. Mary's, and then we were together then 2 more years in the valley. When we were in that state of transition, when we were moving out of the city, that was a point where I should have been like, I'm gone, we're done, like this is not a good relationship. But I didn't. I was locked in.
The thought didn't pass through your head at the time?
No, like that's why I find like there's like a lot of advice that people give to people that are in like toxic situations, and like every time I hear it, I'm like, did you ever exist in one of those situations? Because it's like why didn't you get out? And it's like, you don't understand, like you don't, that doesn't, like, that sometimes doesn't cross your mind. And if people are get out and you're like, why would I do that? Like, you just blind yourself, you know? And especially someone that has a dissociative disorder, because if it's bad, I'll just go somewhere else. Right? Like it in ways like made me more susceptible to leaving myself in a bad situation, because I had already been in so many bad situations in my life. Like I knew what like misery and depression and anxiety, I knew what all that felt like. It was a familiar beast to me. And I already had, you know, my own toxic ways of dealing with it, which are not great. But like it was almost like I was more numb to it, and it had to get so much worse for it to get beyond my point of tolerance of misery, I guess. Like, you know, if you're used to somebody like poking you like your entire life, you just eventually learn to block it out, because if you don't learn to block it out, it drives you insane. You know, pardon my use of that word, but like if you don't learn to just be like, this is how life is, and it's how life is always going to be, so I need to get numb to this. In the same way that, you know, if you have like a, you know, severe knee injury or a back injury and your back is just going to hurt the rest of your life, you have to like get to a point where, you know, like that, it can't be the thing at the front of your mind anymore, because it's a reality that you're just going to have to keep living with.
Right.
And I think that's where I got, and it needed to get so much more than just that poke, you know, I mean, like, and the worst part is like, it just gets slightly more intense, and like, you know, you just get used to that slightly more intense, and you get used to that slightly more, and it was like the point where like it was so bad at one point that like half of my hair had fallen out. Like I'm not kidding. Like this, like, you know, voluptuous head of like blonde hair I have now, like it was like half gone. Like my hair, it was just like, you would just like, you know, I'd be like washing my hair and like full clumps of my hair were coming out, and I was like, shit.
Gone
like
from like stress.
Yep. Like literally like lost half of my hair from stress. And that was like when, like, you know, at the nearish the beginning of the final year of this, and I was like, oh man, like I'm making a lot, like something needs to change, because like when I started exhibiting like physical symptoms of my like mental health trauma, like if it's exhibiting like physically, I was like, oh, then like it was not just like the poke anymore, it was like someone with like a needle being like, wake the fuck up, Natasha, like this is bad, like don't be here anymore.
It's like your body's telling you like this is, yeah, it's like it's literally your body telling you, because your mind, it's numb to it. Yep. But then when your body starts telling you these things, then I mean it's
much harder to ignore. When, you know, like there's like some people that have like anxiety that's so bad they start having like actual heart palpitations, or they get like severe blood pressure issues, like when it starts to like exhibit itself physically. And it's kind of like a wake-up call when it was just like, oh my god, like I had put like 40 pounds on, like all of the like part of me that was an athlete, and that person was just gone. She was like shoved in a back corner of my mind. I couldn't even like recognize myself. Like when I woke up to it, I was like, what in the frig have I allowed happen to myself? But then it's like, you know, like you can never look back and judge the person you were and move on in a way that's healthy. So it's like I look back and I'm like, I understand the why you were numb to it and how you were numb to it. And at what point it was just like,
what was that point?
Like when my hair started falling out, and then I started I was like, oh my god, because I knew I was stressed, and I knew that I hated the situation I was in. Like there was just like a point where I was like, I hate this, hate everything about this. And my brain was like, well, it's not just him, it's also you hate this school, you hate everything. And it's just everything, you know, like maybe like when you're done school and you move back to the city, everything will be fine.
Was there something specifically that he did that like was like also like a wake-up call?
Not a wake-up call. Like, I would say it was like there was no moment where I just like snapped. It was just like I had been drugged and I was like slowly waking up from like a drugged sleep where you're just kind of like, wait. And then like as you get like more and more awake, you start seeing things through different eyes. And then because your eyes are a little bit more open, you open another door and you see something else, and you open another door and you see something else. So it was like a journey of like, you know what, no, this is not okay. And then just like, you know, slowly from like I don't like this to like this is not okay to like this is really not okay to like I really need to get out of this situation, versus like just, you know, some kind of like altercation that made me go, oh my God, he's the worst. It's like, no, he was always the worst, right? Like it was just always the worst. And it was just, you know, binding myself to the fact that he was always the worst, and that worst was doing like mental and physical damage to me. Yeah. No. Anyway, that was 10 years ago. Like it's going to a dark place, but like I'm fine. I swear to God, I'm fine. Like,
did at any point when you were starting to realize what was going on, did you ever feel that you deserved it because of the emotional abuse and you felt so shitty about yourself? Like, did you feel that like you deserved that because of the way he made you feel about yourself?
That's a good question. Like the feeling from my heart right now says like, no, I don't think so. But like, there's a lot of like our time together that I've kind of like blocked a little bit to just be like, it was a thing that happened and it's made me the person I am today, partially. But like I don't dwell on it, and it has been like 10 years, but like I know that like I remember that like when I was like kind of waking up from it, like my thoughts were like, I don't deserve this. So I mean, it could very well have been that like when I was really deep in it, I was like, one of the reasons I'm not fighting back on this because this is all I deserve. I don't remember having those thoughts though.
Part of I guess you could consider it as like another type of trauma, and your brain like gives you like memory loss of that period.
Yeah, like I still like I have like I have control enough where I have memories of the good times. I have even like he was there, like I'm like I don't have that many good memories of like us together just doing things, but like I can like remember like the times we spent together with our friends, because like that was another hitch. We had the exact same friend group, like because we went to school together, we had like the same friend group, and I was like, oh, you know, like if I break up with him, am I gonna lose all of my friends? Am I gonna be the bad guy? Are they gonna understand? Because he was a toxic narcissist, so like, you know, what kind of like stuff is he gonna say about me? You know, like, oh yeah, that was the thing. But anyway, I still have all of those friends. They're mine now.
They're yours.
They're mine. He royally fucked it up with them, so
Yes.
Yeah, no, that was like a whole nother situation. Like after we like broke up, he was like, actually this whole time I've been in love with your best friend, and I'm going to go ask her to be with me. And I was like, she's engaged to another person in our friend group. Yeah,
that's one way to fuck things up.
That's one way to totally screw things up. Yeah, no, that was a time. And everyone decided that they wanted the person that they needed to complain about the situation to was me. And I was like, yo, Also a victim here of this. You want to just roll it back and shut up?
Were your friends aware of what was happening or what happened?
I don't think a lot of my friends know how bad it was. They're gonna find out when this podcast comes out.
Hey.
Hi, love you all. Like how like bad I was. I think like, you know, they are smart enough to know that I wasn't in a good place and to know that we weren't necessarily in a good place. But I think that if they had known really how bad of a place I was in, they would have been, I guess, aggressively being like, get out. Because we had a friend that was with her partner was more like physically violent at objects around her, not at her, but like the kind of guy that like throws things against a wall or like punches a hole in a wall or whatever. And we were like, yeah, please, here's you know, like, make sure you can call me, literally come to my door at any time, like, seriously, but like, please consider not being in that relationship anymore. Because that human definitely needs to go to therapy. And then, you know, after therapy, you could do some therapy together too. And like, and if you're really attached to him, but like, but like, they were never like that with me, because I think like there's one, you know, like there's a thought of like emotional versus like physical abuse, where people have a certain reaction to knowing that someone is like physically abusing someone else versus that somebody just like, they'd be like, oh, he just makes you feel bad. I'm like, yeah, makes me feel bad.
It's kind of like the discussion with mental health versus physical health.
Yeah.
Where like mental is for the most part mental. But like the symptoms are invisible, and physical health is paid more attention to.
Yeah, you know, like it is what it is. But like, I know for sure, like I'm still very close with the friends I was close to then. And I know that if I had been aware of it enough myself and not as numb to it as I was, and I communicated that to them, there's no way they would have let me stay in that situation. Like, it would have been, you know, I would have been the one getting slapped across the face instead of the other. He was like, no, I'm going back. We're like, no. We were all drunk at that time for when that happened. But yeah, it would have ended up happening to me. But yeah, no, I have nothing but love for them. But it was.
Do you wish you told them?
Yeah, I mean, there's this weird like acceptance I have where I know that like I love the person that I am today. Like, I absolutely love the person that I am today. And I know that everything that I went through made me the boss ass bitch that I am today. So as much as, you know, you always wish that bad things didn't happen or they stopped happening earlier, I go, if I didn't get to the point I got before I left, how would that change who I am today? Because like, if I got out earlier, if I got in a different way, I may never found powerlifting. You know, like, it took a very specific set of circumstances for me to end up as a powerlifter, you know, and I love that. And I love the community and everybody that I've gotten from that. So it's like, do I wish I told them and get me out sooner? Yeah, I'm sure past me would have like been like, yeah, if I could get out a year earlier, that would have been awesome. But like, current me goes, I don't want to change anything that happened because, you know, I like where I am today and I like who I am today. So yeah, it's kind
tough
of
question.
It's a tough question about like changing things, because like, you know, if I wasn't happy with, you know, how I turned out as a human being from all of it, I could see being like, yeah, man. Or if I still really carried that trauma with me, then that as well. But like, I don't. You know, like, I feel like that chapter of my life is like super, like, that door is closed, that chest is locked, and like, I have like completely moved on with my life from it, which is good. And it's, you know, freeing. Like when I was like prepping to talk to you, I was like, yeah, actually, yeah, no, God, do not even care. You know, like pass by him on the street and not think I want to punch you in the face. But he's got a very punchable face though.
And you have every right to say that.
I have every right to say that. You know, no, I'm still very, very like close friends with his sister, and I'm sure when she watches this, she'll agree that his face is punchable.
What advice would you have to someone who is going through an abusive, intimate relationship and wants to get out, but feels like they can't?
Honestly, everything is just so, every situation is just so unique. And like I was saying before, like every piece of advice I heard from anybody else just never felt like it applied. Like it was always just like, it's not that bad. Or, you know, like if you're at the point where you're like, I know that I need to get out and I'm in a place where I've acknowledged that this situation is bad and I need to get out and I don't know how, like that is like the most important thing to know and remember is that no matter how much that they have worked to isolate you from everybody that you love, because they do, like the worst of us, like will try and make sure that, you know, you don't talk to your family anymore, or like you never get to see your friends anymore. So you lose that closeness, that no matter how much space they've tried to put between you and those that love you, those people still love you. And you should never hesitate to reach out to them for help. If it's like, you know, your friends are always your friends, even if like you haven't spoken in 2 years because he doesn't let you have girls' nights anymore, or she doesn't let you have boys' nights anymore, like they still love you and they still hold you in your heart. And you should always know that that person that has isolated you hasn't truly isolated you. They've just made you feel like you're isolated. So you have a lot more support than you think you have. And talk to those people and don't be embarrassed about it, because it's not your fault. You know, it's nothing to be embarrassed about that you're in that situation, or that you've been in that situation for a long time, or that you've let, because everyone's like, why didn't you get out? You know, like you're a strong, independent woman. Why didn't you get out? And it's like, you don't fucking know. But like the people that love you don't ask those questions. They don't judge you. They just go, how the fuck can I help this happen as soon as possible? So don't let them put themselves between you and those that will help you. You know, like, crap. Told myself I wasn't going to cry during this interview.
And I didn't know I was going to cry.
I'm sorry.
Tissue.
Thanks, ma'am. Most people won't ever see me cry when I fail a bench press when I'm powerlifting.
A heavy moment.
Yep. But at least from here we get to talk about powerlifting.
Yeah.
Yay!
But I really appreciate you really getting deep into that, because I think a lot of people need to hear that.
Yeah.
Especially people who are people who feel trapped.
Yeah. Because there's a whole thing like when people talk about like, you know, like, well, you know, financial freedom and stuff, and I'm just like, there are places that you can stay if you don't have money and need to get out. That's not, having a place to stay isn't the reason. It's the fact that they feel like they're going to be alone, especially if they have kids. Like, you know, being alone and dealing with your trauma and not having like necessarily the financial stability and feeling so absolutely alone. It's just like, it's freezing, I guess, like in a way, like you just like freeze completely up. And like I was lucky enough to get out before any kind of procreation, thank God. But I can't imagine how infinitely more difficult the situation would have been if I had kids. Frick.
Then it's like you would feel the pressure to stay for like 18-20 years.
Yeah until they're just like, I'll just stay until they graduate from high school or whatever, you know, staying together for the kids. There's a lot of people that are in toxic relationships that think that staying together for their kids is what's going to benefit their kids, but like it's not. Divorce is significantly less traumatic to children than seeing their parents in a toxic relationship, because all that does is model for those children that toxic relationship is what they should expect and how they should behave, or they're constantly dealing with trauma of seeing one or both of their parents, because, you know, let's be honest, some people there's dual toxic relationships where both people need to get out, you know, and they're just watching this toxic relationship and being traumatized by, like, you know, in worst case scenarios, seeing one of their parents being physically abused or emotionally abused. And in reality is like, it would be so much better for those children if it's just like, yeah, we spend weekends with the weekdays with dad and the weekends with mom, or whatever, vice versa, or 2 weeks with one and 2 weeks with the other. That is significantly less traumatizing than, you know, them being in a bad situation. And like studies have shown that that's the truth of it. That, you know, there's like, especially like when kids are in their like junior high or teenage years, are like, it's like, we're getting a divorce, thank God, mom. Like, you know, like, it's just like, yeah, no, yeah, I don't want to live in the house with either of you right now, you know. But yeah, anyway, that's my tangent, my educator tangent.
So when you got out, how exactly was the process of that?
Like, doing it when we were moving anyway made the process easier, because it was like all of our stuff was being packed up and moved, and we made sure it was like done separately. So I was like moved into my own place. So like in a lot of ways there was like a really clean break physically. The, you know, like, you know, emotional healing from something like that is, you know, financial healing from something like that takes a number of years. But like, I remember like when I got out, like I felt just totally powerless, you know, like that I had not left that situation sooner. I just felt like I was like weak as a person, and I was like, I'm not weak as a person, but I deeply felt like it. And my brain went, where were you and what were you doing the last time you felt powerful as a person, the last time you felt strong? And my brain flashed back to like university, when I was doing like bodybuilding and all of this kind of stuff. Because like when I came out of high school, I kind of lost access to like playing on sports teams, because I enjoyed playing sports, but I wasn't so good that I could play on like a university volleyball team. Like, right. I'm 5'6". I was never going to play on a university volleyball team. Let us be honest. So I had to find some other way to like, keep up that side of myself that I like, that athletic person. So I was like, oh, I had never really gone to the gym before. It was always like I was going to play a sport. I wasn't like going to hit arm day or whatever, but I learned how to go hit arm day. And I started like training, like I was like running, I was doing like kind of standard bodybuilding stuff. At the time I wasn't doing like the big three. I wasn't doing like barbell squats or barbell bench or like any deadlifts whatsoever. I was just, you know, if it was like back day, it was like rows and like cable machines and stuff, and like kind of what was expected of, I was like just a little bit beyond what was expected of women in a weight room in 2008. Like I would go into the heavy weight room to do like leg press and stuff, but like that was like the boys' space.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? Like, so like when I first went into a weight room, it was when women were not in weight rooms, but like you would see some women in like, you know, with like the light dumbbells here, or like, you know, on cable machines or something like that, trying to tone. That's an evil word. But like there was no heavy weightlifting. So like that was you know, what I was doing was like just like staying physically fit. And I made a close friend that did that with me, and I loved it. And we had such an amazing time together. And it was like our like, you know, bonding. We both like felt super badass. I remember like going into the weight room and a guy would like finish on the leg press and he'd be like, do you want me to unload it? I'd be like, no, leave it on. That's I'm actually going to add like 3 more plates. And
the best feeling.
That was like the best. That was like my like petty Betty moment where I was like, hello, I'm just like wandering into the men's weight room and lifting significantly more than you, while they all stared at me, because that is what they did to women. It still do in some weight rooms. They still like, they did. If you wandered in there, like they were all like, beep, you know. And especially since like at the time I was like, you know, super blonde and I only weighed maybe like 130 pounds, which is like very difficult for probably anybody that's watching this to like picture what I would look like as like a teeny tiny pre-muscles human. I did not have the thighs. They were not there.
The thunder thighs weren't there.
Not there. Yeah, but I could still, you know, leg press like 500 pounds. So, ha!
God damn.
Yeah, horseback riding. I always horseback rode. I think for it. But anyway, so when I got out, I was like, my brain immediately flashed back to that time with my friend Julie, just being like, I was in the weight room doing the things. I was like, step 1, I need to get back there. I need to get back into something that makes me feel at the very least like I'm physically strong. And if I feel like I'm physically strong, I can help myself feel more mentally strong. Mm-hmm. Was the logic that I used. So I like you were talking about like fixating on school. I essentially like straight fixated on that. Like I was in the gym like every single day of the week. Every day of the week. Not in a toxic way. I did not burn myself in the gym. Like I knew, I'd been playing sports like for so long. I knew when my body was like, this has got to be an easier day. But like I was still made sure that I was present in the gym every day doing something. And it was super helpful because it also like got me around people. Like I was just like at the beginning, I was just doing those like good life classes, like body attack, like the like, you know, kickboxing one, which is as a person that did martial arts for like 10 years, I was like, this is hilarious, but it's cardio and it's fun. And like body pump, which is like, I don't know if you've ever like seen or been.
I'm actually not familiar with like Good Life's group classes like at all.
Yeah, so like body pump was essentially a class where you had these like little short bars. They were like, I'm gonna call them, they were like baby barbells. They weighed like, I think they were like 7 pounds, and they're only like long.
So that's like 3, 4 feet. I don't know.
Yeah, it was enough that it will go to either side of your shoulder before the plates load, and that's about it. So like you would like go into the class and you would make yourself like a little like step aerobic step, and you would have like some miscellaneous things, and they would start and it'd be like, all right, during this song it's going to be chest press time, and like you're like in beat with the song, like doing, and it was always like I went back and did one of these classes after I became a powerlifter, and it was a totally different experience. Humbling, I will say, because it's like, what can you bench press for 65 reps?
How much was that?
85 pounds. But I was like, oh God, I have to do push-ups after this. I've made mistakes. But it was hilarious. But I was like, yeah, I feel really strong, because I could always use more weights than everybody else in the class. Mm-hmm. Because like one of the things I did when I was at Acadia, my part-time jobs, I worked in the lumberyard at Home Depot. So like farm girl, I've always been farm girl strong. It's like I'm like for potato farmers for PI. So ever since I was a kid, I was like slinging bags of potatoes, like manual labor. And then with all the sports and stuff, like I hadn't completely lost, you know, my mojo, but like I'm like hauling around like bags of concrete and like sheets of plywood and like 4x4s and stuff. Shingles were the worst, but I was like, I actually already was physically strong, and like I never gotten not physically strong. I just lost that part of myself. Mm-hmm. So it was like in that class, I was like, oh, I'm actually a strong human. Okay, cool. And that was like, you know, I call it like you give a mouse a cookie moment, where I was like, oh, what if I lifted more more weights. And like then I was like in like the weight room, and one of the trainers there was like, you're like really strong. And I was like, yeah. So I was starting to get my mojo back, right? It's like I'm like, yeah, I actually think that I am pretty strong, you know. And in my head, of course, like keeping in mind that this is like, you know, pre like really any women in powerlifting. In my head, my brain was like, I'm pretty strong, and my head was like, for a girl. Yeah, right. Because like that was like at that time, like, you know, that's, you know, like when I joined powerlifting first, there was like 4 women in the NSPL, the entire NSPL. There was 4 women, and I was one of them. Like, so like, you know, this was it's not that long ago that this was the state of what it was. But like this trainer like was like, have you ever done like squat, bench, deadlift? And I was like, no. And he was like, can I teach you how to power lift? And I was like, sure, let's do this. This sounds fun. So he taught me how to do the lifts to some degree of form competency. I won't say that I came out of my training with him like with exceptional squat or bench, especially deadlift form. Ooh, look back at some of those old videos and I'm like, Natasha, no. but like it was that like that moment of discovering that I was really good at something again. And like, you know, my self-worth had been like so destroyed that I grasped onto strength training as a way of like bolstering my self-worth and just being like, look at you, you're good at these things, you're super physically strong, like how awesome is that? You're awesome. You know, it was like a great way of having victories, which I needed because I felt like I hadn't had a victory in like half a decade. And like powerlifting, like learning how to like strength train and getting stronger just felt like every couple of days I got another victory. And then like losing the like stress weight that I had put on during that time also was felt good. Sorry, trigger warning, weight loss. But like, yeah, like the weight I'd put on because I was like feeling so trapped, and also only eating like the food that I could afford to buy, which was, you know, as everybody knows, good food and food that's good for you is very expensive. Like these days, like my $10 budget would barely buy you a bag of apples, let alone anything else. But like it just like getting back to the gym and connecting with something that I felt like I was good at and just kind of provided like the stepping stone to developing a separate identity. Because, you know, like when you get into like a toxic relationship like that, like your identity gets melded with theirs. And like I needed to develop a separate identity for myself. And because I was only just recently out, it like helped me be like, this is me. This is something that is just me, something that just I do, something just I am good at. Yeah. And that was helpful. I mean, like that it is not a healthy, like the way I used powerlifting at the beginning of my journey of like recovering mental health was good for me at the beginning of my journey of recovering my mental health. It was not a healthy thing to maintain, because you shouldn't ever make your self-worth dependent on your performance in the gym on any given day. And that is something that a lot of powerlifters are very, very bad at.
I noticed that a lot. Yeah. And I noticed that in myself too. Because like when... I mean, my experiences are different from yours, but like there's just something that feels really like badass, like when you're like going to class like in shorts, because you've got the quads, you've got the hamstrings, you've got the calves. Well, in my case I have calves.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if everyone in this room has got calves, but the two on the couch definitely do. Oh yeah, no, Terry's also on team calves.
Yeah, it's got massive calves. Oh my god. But yeah, so like there's just something that makes something about like presenting yourself as like a powerful person, like, yeah, I've got the muscles to show it. Yeah. And like being in a room of plebeians, of like normal people, I guess, like people who don't go to the gym, and just being like, yeah, look at me, and just like feeling super proud. Like, it's really addictive.
Yeah, it really can be. It really can be.
At least that's my perspective.
Yeah. For me, like, because like I'm kind of like a heavier person, it's not quite as obvious when I have regular clothes on that I am like as jacked as I am. And then it's almost like more surprising to people that I'm super strong.
Right.
I actually had a funny thing when I was in Panama. We went zip lining, and at the end of every zip line, I am not a tall human being, and like the zip line like clasp came up to here, but the zip line's attached like up here. So I essentially had to do a pull-up every time we clipped it on, but they were all like ready for me to like step on their leg or whatever to like raise myself up, but then they were just like 1 2 3, and I just like did a pull-up while they unclipped, and they were like, oh, thanks. They did not necessarily know how to deal with this, like, 220 pound chick just doing like a pull-up in front of them. And it was like, hi, this is significantly easier than than doing it when the bar is way over my head. But that's funny.
So how did you get into competing?
So the guy that I was training with had competed in like some other federation. It wasn't NSPL at one point. Like, he was actually super strong. He had like an 800-pound deadlift, and I was like, bro. Anyway, and he was like, you should really think about competing in powerlifting. And I was like, what is competing in powerlifting? Because it's just like, what do you like? What is it? Like, cause like at this time, like nobody knew what powerlifting was. Like, what is it as a sport? It was very much unknown. So I actually found a guy that was running a competition clinic, like an intro to like powerlifting. It was just like four sessions or whatever. And with the idea of like, he would do these 4 sessions, like 1 a week with you. And then 2 weeks after the last session was like the meet that is now the Mike LaRoche. But at the time, it was not called the Mike LaRoche. This thing was like East Coast Open or something like that. So, and this was Lucas Hardy, which I'm sure some people that like are watching this podcast know who Lucas Hardy is, because he's still involved. He's some people might know him on Instagram as like Range of Strength. He does like strength training, but like high flexibility. So yeah, he's the guy that like taught me how to like compete in powerlifting, like way back in the day when he was still competing in powerlifting.
He was a powerlifter?
He was a powerlifter, yeah. He had like it was like a bad like pec tear, or like there was like something where he like repeatedly tore like a bicep or a pec, and so it wasn't safe for him to compete in powerlifting anymore. But there's also like, he had like a young family, and you don't want to be like wrecked up and not be able to play with your kids and shit. You know, like there's a decision you got to make with like, no matter how much you love the sport, where you got to say like, I am X years old and I want to be a functioning human being for X more years. And like, so I respect that. And it's so cool. It was so cool to see him like come back with like the flexibility training, and now the like strength and flexibility training. But yeah, no, he was the one that gave me my first squat command, and taught me about, what is depth in powerlifting, and, how to pausing my bench press and all of this kind of stuff. But it was actually super useful. Like, we did like a mock meet, and then a few weeks later, I did my very first NSPL sanctioned meet, and I was this like bubbly little golden retriever going into this like legitimately, like if you were like, if every powerlifter is a breed of dog, like when I walked to that meet, I was so like exuberant about like being there and excited about like trying the thing. Like, I was a straight golden retriever. Honestly, I'm still kind of a straight golden retriever at powerlifting meets. If you ever compete in the same session as me, I'm very much, except like when I'm competing at like nationals or like internationals, it's just like, I'm sorry, the headphones are going in. Like, you get golden retriever Natasha in the pre-warm up and then the post competition, but then I have to like be a serious business.
Serious boss bitch.
Serious boss bitch. Yeah, I know.
Boss
I look
bitch mode
like
activated.
Yes. like sometimes if you like catch me on the live stream, I look straight terrifying. But
I
really
did watch you compete.
Yeah, like the Panama.
Yeah. There were no golden retriever vibes whatsoever.
No, straight zero golden. More like Doberman Pinscher vibes.
That's what I was actually imagining for the dog breed. Yeah, because they look so serious.
I was so well. I mean, like divide. Like I was sitting in the back room, like waiting to do my third deadlift, and like Christine Castro like walks back and she goes, "What's your max deadlift?" And I was like 197.5 or something like that. And I did it at nationals, but like I had like a back injury, so we were like playing it pretty safe the whole day. I think I totaled like 30 kilos less than I did at nationals at Panama, which was like but you know, whatever. I also want to be functioning in X years, so risks are, you know, not necessary. And she goes like, would you be willing to try and pull that to possibly pull for second? So it was basically like if I had gotten my third pull at 197.5, then if the girl that was in second failed her third attempt deadlift, I would get silver. But she was like far enough ahead of me, but it was like a 35 or a 40 pound jump from my second to my third. You did
take pretty crazy jumps. I remember just like sitting, like I guess on my couch in my office, just like watching you. I'm like, okay, so when is she coming on now? Because like if her second attempt was like this, then like it's probably maybe like
I was prepared
a few kilos,
because we did 12 and a half from my first to my second, and I was like totally prepared to do another 12 and a half. Wasn't necessarily prepared to do like a 20 kilo jump, which my body was like, nope. Like usually I get it significantly further off the ground. Like I usually get it to here before my body noped it, but my body noped it like maybe like 2 inches off the ground. It was like going down. And I was like, hey, you know, I thought maybe if I brought the hype. And what was really funny is because she had locked in second, that girl, one of the USVI competitors, she straight YOLO'd her third attempt and went for like the NAPF deadlift record or something like that. So she originally had like 202.5 submitted for her third attempt, and she put it up to like 227.5. She got it. She broke the floor with it. And it was awesome. I was like, hey, I've already lost. Go! You know, like, you got this. But yeah, no, that was crazy. I don't remember how we got onto that tangent to bring us back.
Well, we can talk about mental health crisis number 2.
Oh yes. So anyone that's been in powerlifting for a while is aware that there is a point where you stop being a noob. You stop being a beginner. The beginner gains don't come quite so quickly, you know, like especially when you slide like middle intermediate as you start going up, and it's like you go from like, yeah, you know, I did, you know, you have 2 competitions like 4 months apart, and you add like, you know, 10 or 20 pounds to each lift because like, you know, you're a noob and you're just making gains every time you fix something about your form, you know, figure something out, you know, your muscles, like you just get better at activating your muscles at higher intensities. You just keep making gains, which is great if you are, you know, if you keep doing that. But when you're using, when your self-worth is based on your performance any day in the gym, and you hit that intermediate mode where not every day is a good day, and sometimes you go like a year or more without having a PR on any given lift, you know, like you start being like, well, I'm capable of doing this, but I'm not. Or, you know, you don't have a coach and you're lifting heavier, but you don't know how to moderate your volume appropriately. So you're getting injured, and so you're having bad days in the gym because things hurt and you're not recovering properly. Like it's part of the sport of powerlifting. It's part of, frankly, any sport that, like, you know, they say is you're going to have like 1/3 of the days are going to feel awesome. 1/3 of the days are going to feel that was fine, and 1/3 of the days are going to feel like shit. And that's the reality of the sport, like the sport of powerlifting, especially, you know, when you get out of that noob games phase. But because I was using powerlifting to bolster my self-worth, when I started experiencing days that were bad in the gym, I didn't have the tools to deal with it. Because it was just being like, you know, it's not that much of a slippery slope to go from I had a bad day, that means I'm a bad powerlifter, that means I'm a bad person.
Would you say that powerlifting was your therapy?
I would never ever use the phrase that powerlifting is my therapy, because powerlifting is not therapy. Powerlifting is an excellent tool for those that need mental health support, because it's a way of getting victories. It's a way of improving your physical health. It's an outlet for excess unhealthy anger. It is a way to learn how to focus and how to center yourself, because as you progress in the sport, you learn that if you're like wilding out at the bar, you're not going to make it far. You got to learn how to be in yourself and be okay with yourself. You've got to learn how to, like, what pain is good and what pain is bad, both mental, emotional, physical. Like, that is a part of your journey in this sport. And like, especially for people that don't have a good relationship with their physical bodies, like learning that their physical bodies are capable of doing these incredible things, and they should love their body and they should feed their body and recover their body so that it can do those incredible things, and recognizing that if they don't do those, if they don't treat their body with love, they're not going to be able to do the things, those incredible things that bring them so much happiness. Those are all important lessons and important things that like powerlifting can help people with. But you have to say on that, like, powerlifting didn't fix my self-worth problems. It didn't fix, you know, my anxiety. It didn't fix my dissociative disorder. Like, I've been competing in powerlifting for a decade. Still got it. Still got all that. But did it teach me so many lessons that I needed to know? Did it motivate me to get the resources I needed? Because being a powerlifter and being successful at powerlifting meant a lot to me. And I realized that when powerlifting started making me feel bad, because I was like, I'm bad at powerlifting. Oh, you know, it's that gifted child thing again. I was a gifted child, and then now things are going badly. I'm not. I was like, oh, so much pressure, because I felt like, you know, like I went to nationals the first year I was competing, and I medaled at nationals at my first year ever competing, and then it was just like, everything is so much harder now, or whatever. Well, I just like had the realization that I just like gone through that cycle again. Oh dear. But it made me realize how much like competing in powerlifting and remaining as a part of the powerlifting community, how much that meant to me as a person. So it was a good motivation to make the changes that I knew that I needed to make. So like, one of the things I did was I looked into sports psychology, because like, you know, having done part of a psychology degree, technically all of a psychology degree, I was like, okay, I know that there's a branch of psychology called sports psychology that's specifically dealing with athlete problems. And I found this app that I could not recommend more. Like, if I could like stand on top of a building and scream that everyone should use this. It's called Lucid Mental Training. Lucid as in like lucid dreaming. Mental training. And it taught me kind of three important things. One was that you have your self-worth is not dependent on your performance on any given day. That you have worth as a person because you are a person, and you have value because you are a human being. You innately have value and you innately have worth. And that it's important to get to a place where your performance is not what gives you worth. And I've carried that like for a long time. And then there was one that was like self-confidence, and that there's three types of self-confidence. There's like people that don't have self-confidence, people that only have self-confidence in the things that are going well, and people that have confidence in themselves no matter what phase of their life they're in. They recognize that if something is going badly, or if there's hiccups in their path, that doesn't mean that they can't still have confidence as a person. That was like super difficult place to get to, because like I was like phase 2 where I was like, I'm a boss ass bitch, yeah. But then something would go bad and I'd be like, no I'm not, you know, like you go to a bad place. But like getting to a place where like no matter, you know, if I'm super injured or something like that and I can't compete, like frig, like 11 weeks ago now, like I couldn't even get up from the floor. Like my back was so bad. But like I was like, it's fine, like I will be fine, I will just do everything that I need to do and go. And like no matter how bad things were getting, like I didn't lose my feeling of, you know, being a, you know, boss. I was like, fine, I'm fine, you know, like this doesn't mean I'm a bad athlete, this doesn't mean anything, it just means that, you know, I had a twisted spine. Like it's just like I finally had powerlifted long enough, and with like over the years, like one of my spine had kind of twisted because like I had a hip anyway, I dislocated my hip when I was younger, and that caused my spine to slightly twist, and apparently just twisted more over time. And like my like bronze medal pull at nationals was apparently just basically the straw that broke the camel's back, me being the camel, in the metaphor. Anyway, but like that was like, it was interesting, like finally getting that place where like my confidence is like was not dependent on the environment around me, the reactions of people around me. Like I didn't need other people to tell me I was awesome in order to feel confident about myself. And then the third one was one of the most interesting ones, which is called competitive drive, which is when your competitive drive is weak. You look at your competitors as obstacles. So like if you show up to a meet and you would like see the person that you're going to be battling with, and you'd like look at them and being like, you're an obstacle in the path to my success. Mm-hmm. But true competitive drive is looking at your competitors as partners in your equal growth. So like if at nationals I didn't have that person that was challenging me for third, challenging me for the podium position, I would never have pushed myself so hard. I would have never reached the heights that I did in that competition, which made it like one of the best competitions of my life. But I could only do that because I had her as my competition. So like at no point you're looking at her and saying, you're in my way. Like, I mean, like objectively, yeah, we're both fighting for the same goal, but like powerlifting is a marathon. Right? And if you can look at the people that are as strong as you or stronger than you and look at them and use them as motivation to be better at the sport, and look at them as like, you're, you know, we can use each other to be our best. Like that's what like Missy Stone and I have been doing for forever. Because when we both like, because I started in 2014, Melissa Stone Guerin, she started in 2016, and pretty much right from the get-go we were like the kind of strongest female powerlifters around, because that's when like Eileen deployed, kind of left powerlifting at that point, and we just kind of had like this like fun rivalry between us to just be like, you know, who's going to bench more at the next competition, being like, oh, I beat your squat or whatever, like to just like be like, you know, we weren't like, you're standing in my way of being officially the strongest woman in the NSPL, you know, like, which sounds like such BS when you say it out loud, right?
And in that voice too.
And in that voice, yes, I know. I have many voices, and a lot of people that are listening to this have probably heard a wide variety of them, even on this podcast. I told you off the top that I'm a ridiculous person, and I'm holding to it. But just being able to like see those around you, not like just to be able to use each other, because like I don't think that either of us would be as good at the sport today as we are if we didn't reach out to each other as a way to drive our own success. Just being like, I'm seeing all of the hard work you're putting in, and I recognize it, and I recognize that I need to work just as hard in order to stay just as successful, and let us just like drive each other to not slack off, to like not be like, I don't want to work today. No, you know who's working today? Missy's working today. You know, like, and it's fun. And that is like the kind of like, I'd say like the biggest like stepping stone in like the sports psychology thing, where you get assured enough of yourself as a competitor to be able to be like, I am not the best. Who can make me the best? And look at your competitors as people that can help make you the best. Now, will I ever be as strong as Brittany Schlater? No, I will not. But I will keep attempting to be.
It's basically like reframing the mindset of like competition, where I guess I can't really put that into words. I don't have the experience.
Yeah, it's just it's all about reframing, and like sports psychology is all just reframing, because there is the objective reality and there is how you choose to interpret it.
Right.
And I mean, that's really the reality with like most mental health things, like those with social anxiety can be like, the objective reality is people are your friends, and the reality that your anxiety makes you think is nobody likes me. I'm the worst. And you're like, as a person that has experienced that so many times, everyone is mad at me, and it's like, no, they're not. It's fine. But that's like the you know, the objective reality versus how we choose to interpret it. And yeah, it's really kind of super important in sports psychology. But yeah, it's one of those things where like everyone's like, yeah, man, like, you know, like powerlifting is my therapy and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, so
there's a downside.
There's a downside there. Like sometimes, if you've been in it long enough, you might experience powerlifting as your like next mental health crisis. Though, I mean, as a person that has been in the sport so long, I can say that I can count the number of people that are still competing with the NSPL that were competing when I first joined on one hand. People that have been in the sport for that long. And it's sad and it sucks to just see people dropping off. People start the sport and they feel the community and they feel like the incredible support and the incredible benefits of powerlifting, and like it sucks you in and you have so much joy with it. Like, I mean, I see like, you know, hosting a whole lot of meets, I got to see so many people's first competitions. And like when I referee, you know, like I'm often like the first contact that person has with anything at a powerlifting meet, and they're like nervous and they're excited and they're like, I can't wait to do this thing. I'm so excited. And then, you know, they learn the tools to do the lifts, but they don't learn the tools to handle the mental aspect of the sport, because it's not talked about. Like, you know, like this kind of podcast is like being like, what's mental health and powerlifting mean? Like, there is nobody talking about like, well, what are the problems that you face? Like when you run into, you know, being an athlete in literally any sport, like powerlifting is not unique. When you start trying to do a sport at a high level, you run into these pressures and you run into these difficulties, and like, you know, you have to have tools in your toolbox to be able to do them. And a lot of people don't. Like, I friggin' didn't.
Do you have some now?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I have a ton of tools in my toolbox.
Can you share a few of them?
Well, like most of them are like those, like the 3 pillars, but, I would say the most important thing that I learned to do was to be calm. It's this weird thing where like I learned how to center in myself at any given moment, where even if like when I'm walking up to a bar, be it in like the basement of like in my house or on the platform, is to be able to just quiet everything, to be able to focus in the moment. So like, you know, like the voices that are saying, you're probably going to fail this set, you're not good at this or whatever. being able to just turn it all off. Like it's like almost like a meditation, like, you know, being able to like breathe in and then breathe out everything, where it's just you existing in the moment. And at first I could only do that like in the gym by myself. And then like learning how to continue to apply that ability to enact calm in any moment I needed it to. Like, you know, I started learning it for powerlifting, and, you know, I was able to do it like in competition or in the warm-up room, but I didn't quite nail it on the platform. And then I started being able to do it on the platform. And then I started being able to do it anytime I had like an anxiety attack. I could, you know, try and replicate that moment of calm with it. And like recently I noticed it extended to like existing as like a person. Like I had been chosen for Team Canada and I was laying on my floor and I could not get up. And I knew that in 10 weeks I had to step on an international stage. And I was like, I can't stand, let alone walk, let alone squat. And I did not know how long it was going to take before I was going to be able to do any of the things I needed to, let alone be able to actually do something that wouldn't be an abject embarrassment to myself. Where it's like, you know, like I still have an ego. I'm not a perfect human being. I was sitting there going like, if I'm going to be going to compete and I'm going to be hitting like 70% of my numbers, or I'm going to be like squatting the bar or something like that, like I refuse to do that. And it made me feel like a little bit bad because I was like, I've taken one of the Team Canada spots. Theoretically, I took it from somebody. And like, now I'm going to like show up and like not even be able to do what I need to do to like hit the platform or whatever. But like the lessons that I had learned in enacting calm, you know, I was able to surprisingly, like I surprised myself in how much I could apply those to it during the time when I was recovering, when I was like, it's going to be okay. All we can do is everything you can do. Like how quickly, there is some parts of how quickly you recover that are in your control and some that are out. We're just going to do everything that we can that is within our control, and we will get where we get, you know? And like, you know, I had occasional moments where, you know, like the other part of me was like, ah, you know, like everyone has it, but like, you know, I was like mostly just like able to just be and exist and know that I was doing everything that I could do and not panicking about it. And like I ended up like, you know, getting into that competition. I think I got back up to like 95% or something like that, which like looking back feels crazy because like, you know, 10 weeks ago, like being like splows out on the floor being like, oh my God, this is absolutely terrible. But like, I think it's the thing that's helped with the most growth in my maturity in the sport. Being able to just, you know, be able to just accept the moment I am in and then put aside, you know, for even, you know, starting to be able to do it for a second and then multiple seconds and then a full set. And then, you know, eventually you're able to just like hold it for like an entire like squat session, you know, like in a competition or something like that. You know, you may have like your like panic moments like between squat and bench where you're like, ah, but like, you know.
Yeah. But then like as you continue to like practice that, it becomes easier and you're able to avoid moments of panic, especially in competition when it counts, because you spent weeks training for essentially 3 reps. Essentially 3 reps of each lift.
Well, 9. It's essentially 3 reps of each lift. You got like 3 squats, 3 benches, 3 deadlifts. And it's crazy when people are like, oh, you know, it's like such a hard day on competing. I'm like, this is the easiest day of my training cycle. I gotta like do essentially 9 lifts and a few warm-ups, like, and I do very few warm-ups in competition. But I didn't necessarily realize how big of a tool that had been until I was talking to one of the people that are on my powerlifting team, and she was prepping for her first nationals. But it was like a nationals in a different federation. And she had all of these feelings of, what if I fail? What if I'm inadequate? I'm going onto this big stage for the first time. Well, what if I, you know, there's expectations of me because I'm going to, you know, break some records and stuff. And it's just like this thing of like learning that it's okay. You're only going to be able to do what you do on that day. You know, there's dozens of factors in what that impact how you can, like how your competition days goes, and only some of them are in your control. You know, like the referees that are there that day, not in your control. You know, whether a massive party starts up across the hallway from you in your hotel room, not in your control. That happened to me before an Easterns before. I slept like 2 hours before competing. It was great. Like those things that are not in your control, and all you can do is control your own mindset and control your own recovery and preparation, and like learning when you accept that you can just do what's in your control, then that helps you bring out the calm. And when you're calm, you can do something. Because if you're not calm, like your form is going to be wobbly, you're going to be all over the place.
There's a lot of mental clutter that's like hindering your performance.
Yeah. And there's some things like if you like look at, if people go back and like look at some of my lifting videos or something, you might see that moment that I flick the switch, because there's like a level of calm or whatever that I hold just like existing as like a powerlifter in a competition. But then it's like the volume of that gets like turned up. Like the moment I like lay eyes on the bar for when I go to squat, I have a moment I always like put one hand on each side of the bar, and then I look straight at the bar, and then I flip the switch. And then like, that's where I'm just like utterly like, I don't hear anything. I don't hear the crowd. I don't hear, I mean, obviously I hear the head referee. There's like a moment where I was like, the squat command is going to come, but like, but you know, stuff like that. Like it's just, you kind of like, you're being like, I am on the platform. I have done everything that I could possibly do to get here. I've controlled all the variables that I can. What will be. And then it goes, let's just do it. And then it's just like quiet, and then you do the thing, and then sometimes afterwards you're like, yeah. But you know, you can let go of it and jump on your handler when you're very excited.
I've seen so many people like just jump into a koala hug.
Yes. Yeah, I joked because like Vicky Taylor Hood, she was like the president of Newfoundland powerlifting when I was president Nova Scotia, and we got really close, and she handled me at nationals this year, and I was joking that if I pulled and got the bronze medal, I was gonna run off the stage and jump into her arms. Now like Vicky comes up to like here on me and that would have gone very poorly, but I was like, yeah, I could do it as a joke and it would look absolutely hilarious. But instead I just bounced like a rabbit in her general direction, gave her a hug. But yeah, I see like all of these like little lifters that have like the huge coaches that they're just like, ah!
Yeah,
like they just like fling themselves essentially, being like, catch me. And it's objectively hilarious, and you're like trying to be like straight face as head referee, but you're also like, nah.
Considering your experience in powerlifting and with being president, would you have any advice for maybe some of the newer lifters or people who want to get into the sport?
For people that want to get into the sport that are not already in it, and even people that are very new to the sport, I'd say the most important thing that you need to do is volunteer. Get involved. Like, be a part of it, because there's a lot of people that show up to their first powerlifting meet to compete, and they've never been to a powerlifting meet before. Like, can you imagine being like, I'm going to play competitive soccer, and have never even watched a soccer game? Like, that sounds crazy, right? And it's just like, you know what you should do? Watch a soccer game. And there's people that show up to their first competition and they've never read the rule book. Would you be like, I'm going to play this basketball game and not figure out what the rules of basketball are? No, it seems crazy. But because people
I can shoot hoops.
Yeah. Right. But like, people are like, I just need to squat and bench and deadlift. Those are the rules I need to know. And like, you know, there's videos online being like, well, squats, you have 3 commands and you have to squat to depth or whatever, but they don't really, you know, they haven't put in and necessarily invested the time in understanding how the sport works. They don't know how attempts work or anything like that. And I'm like, dude, like the best thing you can do is like, if you're like, I want to compete in powerlifting, sign up and work at the head table, sign up and work at the platform. Because like if you're on the platform starting and loading, you see like lifters got 60 seconds to do their lift. You see in person what the commands look like, what the calls look like, what it means when you get red lights and white lights. You know, you get familiar with loading the bar. You get to see how experienced people approach the bar, how they lift, what their form looks like, all that kind of stuff. It's just like, it's the best way of just like immersing yourself in the experience before you're the one responsible for like enacting that experience. Mm-hmm. And that's what I tell, like, because there's people would email me when I was the head and being like, how do I get involved? I was like, how about this? We've got a competition come up. Please come in. And if you feel comfortable, like, volunteer at the head table. We'll just put you in for attempts, right? Because if you're, you kind of got to know what you're doing if you're like on the computer, and not a lot of people are confident announcing. That's its own like special realm of extroverts. Yeah. But like if you're just attempts, that you get to learn a lot of the rules when you're working at the head table. You learn the 60 seconds. You get to hear someone talking about like if you're doing a national record, you get to go up by like half kilo increments. Like you get to learn like all these kind of things, and you get to watch, and you get to watch the referees, watch the lifters and things like that. And it's like a slightly more immersive watching of the soccer game before you play your first soccer game, because watching YouTube videos is not the same.
Yeah, YouTube videos like tend to focus on like the more technical side of things, and not so much like what actually happens, goes into detail. Like they don't go into detail of like what actually happens on meet day.
Yeah, it might be a video being like, oh, you're going to do a lift and you've got 60 seconds, but you don't know what that 60 seconds feels like. Yeah. You don't know the path that lifters have to follow. You don't know how like, you might get to, if you're at the head table and stuff like that, you might get to see coaches and referees, like coaches and people interacting with like the jury table and things like that. Like there's a lot of education to be had in volunteering before you compete, and then obviously in volunteering after you compete, because volunteering is extraordinarily important for the sport. Anyway, soapbox off. But that is like my biggest advice for people that have never competed, or maybe just like done one meet and are like, I feel like a little unsteady about that, is just making sure that you're involved in ways when you're not competing, because that, and even people that are very experienced in powerlifting, volunteering at high level meets, you can learn a lot of things. Like I was talking to a lifting friend, and she's saying like she had, as a provincial level referee, she had volunteered like around as like on the platform and stuff like that at an international, like when Worlds was hosted in Calgary. I think this would have been maybe like 2018 or 2019. There was Worlds in Calgary. And she got a chance to volunteer with that. And the amount she learned just being able to watch a higher level meet before she had to actually do a meet of that quality. Like, what is it like? What are the referees like? How are the rules applied differently? Because like when you get to higher levels, you have like coaches that are more aggressive with the jury table, know the rules better. There's lots of things, like you see a lot more like deadlift attempt changes and stuff flying around, and understanding on like bar loading rules and all this kind of stuff. And it's just always really educational to like be like, when you're going to lift at a certain level, make sure you also volunteer at that level. Like if you're doing your first nationals and you're not lifting in the first session, volunteer on the first day, get a feel for it. Mm-hmm. Before you have to compete, because like frankly, like it can be a bit of a long day working at the head table, but like it ain't gonna ruin your gains. Like you're going to be able to do it, like it's gonna be fine. Like it's not gonna mess up your sleep or whatever. Just like understand that volunteering gives you experience that maybe you didn't appreciate. Besides that, like understanding that like powerlifting, like there's some people that are like wondrous genetic freaks that like become super duper strong in like a couple of years. We're looking at like Leah Benoit or like France, like some of these people that have just like came the frig out of nowhere. They're like still juniors, and you're just like, what are you even doing? You're like 20 and like total like 100 kilos more than me.
I think Leah is open now.
No, they compete open but still junior. It's like, no, either her or no, it's Turbo Tiff. I think.
I was gonna mention her because like
Yeah.
I think she used to be like she wanted to get into boxing, but then she was too small because like she's really petite.
She's very small.
And then she comes into powerlifting and is like one of the best.
Yeah, I was thinking it was Leah, but I think it's Tiff that's only like 20, but she competes open because she wins anyway. You know, like there's not nearly as much hype for like junior worlds as there is for like open worlds or whatever. And I completely support the decision of just being like, can you take on Heather Connor? Yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know, like she's awesome. But like there are people that get super strong like right away. And those are people that are either did like high level athletics before they got into powerlifting. Like Jess Bittner was like a very high level track and field athlete before she started powerlifting. You know, like she squatted like 315 after like 4 months in the gym. You know, like she had the base, right? And has only been, you know, she with immense amounts of hard work and like talent in the sport, like she's gotten super strong relatively quickly. Though I mean, admittedly, she has been in the sport for like 6 or 7 years now. Like she's not like a baby in the sport anymore. Like I remember weighing her in at like Easterns in like 2017. Yeah, that was a moment. She was super jacked even back then, by the way. Yes, but outside of these like few people that just have the genetic gift, powerlifting is like a marathon. And like people say all the time, it's like a marathon, it's not a sprint. But what does that mean in application? I mean, like most people mean it as in like, be patient, you know, you'll get strong, a little bit stronger every year and eventually you'll be very strong. But the thing that frigs up a lot of powerlifters in year 2, year 3 is they get their first overuse injury. And they don't know how to rehab properly. They don't see the right people, or they're just like, whatever, I'll work through it. It only hurts sometimes. And that only hurts sometimes becomes, well, it hurts a little bit more frequently now. And then in the end, they just get frustrated because it's never getting better. It's not improving. I keep having these bad gym days. Like, oh, maybe I'm just broken. And there's that frustration because it's like, if powerlifting is a marathon, you have to make decisions not for the today you in the sport and not even for the 6 months in the future you in the sport. You have to think about the like 3-4 years down the line you in the sport, where it's like if you're not taking appropriate actions and appropriate deloads when you're injured now, you are creating injuries that could then lead to destroying your career entirely, where it's like your ego at any given moment needs to be able to back burner. If you need to go back to squatting the bar because you had a knee injury, you go back to squatting the freaking bar. There's no like, oh, it doesn't really hurt that much today, let's throw 4 plates on. Like you can't, because it's like you're just going to make it worse. And like that worsening like is what like most of the people I've seen drop out of the sport. I mean, like there's a chunk of women that drop out of the sport because they had babies, and we still hope that we'll see them back eventually, and I know that we will, some of them, but a lot of people, they drop out because they get hurt and they can never find themselves unhurt. They just keep re-injuring themselves because they're not listening to they're not thinking about their future when they're thinking now. And like what it was like when I was injured, and as much as I wanted to be like, oh man, I gotta get back to like 3 plates on my back or else I'm never gonna get back to here in 4 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever, that voice was in my head. But like the other voice has to be like, you know, who wants to be able to walk and lift like 10 years in the future, Natasha, 20 years in the future, Natasha. You know, like I want to be able to be in this sport for a long time. You know, like I'm a few years off from hitting Masters 1, but you know, I would love to be a Masters 3 powerlifter. And if I don't take care of my body the way it needs to be taken care of, knowing that if all of the time I invest in recovery and eating my own ego today will benefit the future me and the strength gains that future me can make. Like if I don't do that, then you've roasted yourself. Mm-hmm. You know, and I hate seeing lifters fall out because of constant injury, because it just feels like it's something that doesn't need to happen. if people, but I think that's just like another education problem where, because like that kind of thing isn't necessarily talked about. You hear that it's you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint, but like not the like, bro, take the plates off the bar and go see a physiotherapist. Like you've got a partially torn pec, you know, like you gotta just gotta deal with it, man. But that's my second soapbox of the day that I'm going to just get off there now.
I have some closing questions that I ask every guest. Cool. So question 1 is, what's currently your biggest mental health struggle and how does lifting help?
That's a good question. Because part of my brain went, I don't have any current mental health struggles. And I'm just like, sit down. I'd say like the thing that like still dogs most is like I still have anxiety, and you know like how bad that is, you know, waxes and wanes. But like when you got generalized anxiety, it's just kind of like you got generalized anxiety. This is just the thing that you have, and you know like your low level is still low level. But powerlifting helps for me because when I can't achieve the moments of calm in the anxiety in my everyday life, then I have to go back to basics and achieve them in that moment, because it's the easiest place for me to achieve those moments of calm and anxiety is at the bar. And you know, if I can't achieve them at the bar, I'm pretty much like shit out of luck. But I've never had it where I haven't been able to, like, by the end of a lifting session, at least achieve like some victory in a moment of calm. That like being able to model those, like, I know you're feeling anxious about this set, you know, because it's a difficult thing that you're about to do. And I know that part of your brain is saying that you're going to fail, just like in your everyday life. You're like, this is a thing I'm about to do that feels really difficult. And there's a part of your brain saying that you can't do it. And in that moment, when I'm lifting, I can achieve that moment of calm, saying I can only do what I can do each day, and I will do my best to do this difficult thing. I acknowledge that it is difficult, but I acknowledge that I have worked as hard as I can in order to achieve this difficult thing. And that is all I can do. And then achieve that moment of calm. And it's a great practice for me to be able to do it in my everyday life, because like the better I am and the more I practice it in powerlifting, the more I can apply it to like my everyday life when I'm having anxiety at work, or, you know, in my everyday life, or in a relationship or something like that. Like if I'm like, I can have that moment being like, okay, Natasha, remember, we have done everything that we can, you know, like you get that like self-talk where it's like entry level, like doing it at the bar is entry level for me. And the more I practice it in the sport, the more I can practice in my everyday life. Right. And the more it helps me handle my anxiety. And of course, powerlifting off, you know, competitions also can cause anxiety. I had like a massive anxiety attack the morning of like competing in Pando. I was like, it took me until like weigh-ins to achieve any level of calm, and then I was like fine. But like once I got there, I was fine. But until I got there, I was like freaking out. But yeah, that's me, just a anxious person in in a seemingly extroverted skin.
And then question 2: what's keeping you going in powerlifting right now?
It's got to be the people. You know, like even when you're like, this is hard. And some days you're just like, why am I doing this? I just hurt all of the time, you know, when you're peaking, especially, and you're like, my emotions are everywhere because my nervous system is totally friggin' fried. And you just have to go down for another absolute miserable like workout that you know, because they'll run you into the ground or whatever. When your coach starts like peaking you in like a way that you're just like, I should maybe just stop doing this ever. Then you just like, then you get to the competition and you see the people and you're just like, right, I love you all. Like, and you see all the smiling faces. And even when I was like feeling like burnt out, like running the NSPL, I get to a meet and people would be so excited to compete and so excited about their personal bests or having recovered from something, or just, you know, they just brought this energy, and you just sit there and you like bask in it, and you're like, this is why I do it. Yeah. This is worth all of the effort of running around like a chicken with my head cut off for 3 days before hosting this competition. Just that big smile, or someone coming up and being like, this was great, I had such a great time, and you're like, thank you. Or like a lifter coming up to me after I was like refereeing, I was like head refereeing, and they're like, I can't express how awesome it was to like walk out for my first competition squat ever and to see a woman sitting in front of me, you know, like, and like that told me that I could be in this sport, because there was women that had been in this sport long enough to become referees that told me that I also could be in this sport a long time if I just, you know, work hard. You know, like when I realized I had transitioned from being like a lifter to like a mentor in the sport, it was just like this kind of like, it just brings you like a lot of happiness and a lot of joy. And I think, like, you know, if ever comes a time where I can't compete in powerlifting, like my horseback riding injuries like catch up to me and they're like, no, you have to stop now, you and your twisted spine, then like I don't think it would ever stop me from continuing to be a part, even if I couldn't do the lifting part. Like I would still don't want to leave behind like the incredible community, like especially the NSPL. Pretty great, you know, pretty great peeps. I love you all very much.
Aww. Cutting this moment. Question 3.
Question number 3.
Last question of the day.
Who's your least favorite member?
What?
I was like, who is your least favorite member? Joking.
No.
Joking.
Question 3. If you could change anything about the journey you took on from your lowest point to now, what would you change and why? I think we already went over this.
Yeah, which is like,
I'll let you repeat.
I don't think, like, because I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't dealt with the shit. It wouldn't be me, and I'm awesome. So
boss bitch mode activated here.
Activated. Self-confidence, not dependent on a given situation.
Let's go.
Yeah. Let's go. Like, I mean, like, it still like happens, but like, no, like, I wouldn't. I mean, there's like, I would love to spare younger me from the misery that, you know, she went through, but being in a good place now, I don't like, I'm kind of like, I like who I am and where I am in my garden and my my piggies that everybody loves. No, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change anything about my life now, which means I can't change anything about how my life was. So it's reality.
Very good answer. So far, everyone who's been on the podcast has been saying like they wouldn't change anything. Yeah. Some hope for some of the listeners.
Yeah, I think it's just like knowing that like you can get to, you know, like sometimes life can be shit. It can be super bad, but in a way, like no matter how bad it gets, there's always hope that it'll get better. Like I kind of went from like one tragedy to another for a while, and like, you know, like I'm in a great place now with a, you know, a partner that I like adore, like absolutely adore and worship the ground he walks on, like in a healthy way. You know, he's just like this, like the other half of my soul, and in a life that I like. And you know, if you told me, you know, a decade ago that that's where I would be like, shut your lying mouth. You know, like there's no way I'll ever like have and be in the place that I am now and have it, but like I am, and like everybody can have it, you know. I mean, it might take longer for some people than others, but like it can get better, you know.
And everyone deserves it.
You all deserve to be
even
happy.
If someone makes you feel like absolute shit,
yeah, fuck them.
Just try not to punch their face.
It's not very nice. We shouldn't actually punch people in the face.
You can do it in your own world.
Yeah, thanks. Nice. you can daydream about it, but
don't actually do it.
No actual punching, even if their face is really punchable.
All right. Thank you for being on the podcast. You shared some very valuable stories that I think a lot of women will resonate with. I hope they found at least a little bit more hope in their situation if they are going through something similar to you. And when you share your experience with identifying your self-worth with powerlifting, talking about the app that you discovered with all the new ways to like reframe your mindset and sports psychology, I think that is going to be a game changer for many people.
Yeah, I hope that people check it out, even if it's just checking out the concepts of sports psychology and how they can apply to you, just to know and understand if you have a negative or unhealthy mindset with any sport that you do.
And what was that app called?
Lucid Mental Training.
Not sponsored.
Not an ad. I don't even use it anymore. I used it for I think it was 3 months is all it took of using it. There was little 5-minute snippets of little exercises to do every day, and I did it every day for 3 months, and then I didn't need it anymore. So it's
wow.
Legitimate. It was legitimately useful. Really still to me, and it's been that was 2016 or 2017, so we're 5-6 years on, and I still have everything I learned on that completely and utterly internalized in my very being.
That's actually really impressive.
Yeah, so I'm a moment going I hope it still exists. yeah, it probably does. It might be slightly more expensive now though, as everything is.
Thank you for listening. I hope you found this episode with Natasha moving and inspiring. If you're in a similar situation, I hope you realize that you're not really alone and that it is possible to get out of an abusive relationship, even if it feels impossible. I hope that by listening to Natasha's story, it brings you some amount of hope. And please don't be afraid to reach out to people you trust, although I know it is easier said than done. You can find Natasha on Instagram at natty_ching. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at No Restrictions Pod and at No Restrictions Apparel. If you enjoy this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and a review. If you want another way to support us, you can purchase some No Restrictions Apparel. Just visit norestrictionsapparel.com. Thanks again for listening, and talk to you next time.